And just for anyone who is joining us, we are bringing you breaking news on the war in Iran. First off, the breaking news we must tell you about is that a 7th service member, U.S. service member, has been killed in the conflict. The second piece of breaking news that we are following is that Iran has appointed a new supreme leader, and that is Mojtaba Khomeini, who is the son of the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. This man is in his 50s. I'm going to pull up his age right here, 57. He served in the Iran-Iraq War. He was injured there. He developed close ties with security and military services during the war, close ties with the IRGC, which we have heard from Courtney Keeley. He is the second son of the late Ayatollah. He is married. He has a son. He's been leading a secretive life. He's never given a speech, as we heard from Imtiaz. He's not really out and about. He's never held government office. He's been his father's assistant and first to counselor sign before becoming the supreme leader. He has also been teaching in a clerical school, essentially, effectively Ayatollah training. Not much here on public record, but many people that we are hearing from, including our own Imtiaz Tayyab and Courtney Keeley, is that he is much like his father, and that certainly Imtiaz characterizing this as perhaps the most antagonistic choice, antagonistic in the eyes of the U.S. and in the eyes of Israel. Let's go ahead and bring CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams into the conversation. She joins us from northern Iraq. Holly, what have you been seeing and hearing and gathering from your reporting?
Hey there, Lindsay. I think what's interesting here is that, at least superficially, this looks like a kind of choice of continuity, right? The son of the previous supreme leader. Of course, what we need to remember is that the Iranian regime, which is in a weakened state, perhaps the weakest it's ever been since the revolution of 1979, the regime wants this, needs this to look like continuity, certainly in the eyes of the outside world, but perhaps more importantly in the eyes of its own people. The question, I guess, is whether this really is continuity, whether this, the second son of the former supreme leader will wield the same kind of power as his predecessors, or whether this is really window dressing and there will be other people inside Iran who are wielding that power. Of course, the background to all of this is that we still don't have a lot of clarity on what the end game of this war is for President Trump and for Israel. It seems they're seeking some kind of regime change, but what kind of regime change? Do they want a democratic Iran? Do they want a leader that they can do business with? Do they want, as part of that, a new nuclear deal with Iran? Even before this announcement about the new supreme leader, Israel made it clear that it will pursue any successor of the former supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And Trump said recently that if the new leader doesn't get approval from us, that is the United States, he's not going to last long.
What other reaction are you tracking from where you are in the region?
Difficult to say. I guess the point to make is that so many of America's partners in this region didn't want this war to happen in the first place. They made it very clear to the United States that they thought that this war, that another attack on Iran, would be destabilizing politically and economically. So what we need to be keeping an eye on is whether they think that this choice, which is at least superficially one about continuity, is something that might bring stability. That seems unlikely given the comments of both Israel and President Trump.
Holly, days ago, President Trump told Reuters that he backs Iraqi Kurds launching an Iranian offensive. Where are we with that?
Yeah, so, I mean, this is part of the sort of confusion or lack of clarity around the end game. So we're in northern Iraq. We're very close to Iran's border. And there are several Iranian opposition groups that operate in this area. Some of them are armed. They represent the Kurdish ethnic minority, which is around 10% of Iran's population. Now, this past week, President Trump really encouraged those groups to launch a military offensive inside Iran against the regime. We spoke to one of those groups who told us that they were in touch with the US government. They told us that they perceived America and Israel's war on Iran as an opportunity for them to launch a military offensive against the regime. When we asked them if they'd received any promises of support, they said they couldn't answer that. It was too sensitive. Then yesterday, Saturday, President Trump said that he didn't think it was a good idea to send those Kurdish groups into Iran and they weren't needed. But when we spoke to some of those armed groups today, they said, at least when we spoke to them, that they hadn't received any communication about that. They hadn't been told to stand down. They hadn't been told that a military intervention wasn't wanted. So that just all speaks to that confusion, including in this regime, about what the end game is for this war.
Can you give us, while we have you, a little bit more historical context on why they would view this as an opportunity?
So they're very much against the regime. We've filmed with a number of these groups. Many of their members, many of their fighters who've taken up arms are women. Some of them have told us that the reason that they left Iran is that they are women and that they think that women's rights are not respected or are limited in Iran. They're also members of that Kurdish ethnic minority, around 10% of Iran's population, and they say that their people inside Iran are oppressed, and they dream one day of living in a part of Iran that's majority Kurdish that has some degree of autonomy. Of course, when we think about temptations or motivations to get involved in some kind of military offensive in Iran, despite the fact that they are massively outgunned by the Iranian regime, they only seem to have light arms. Of course, the idea of some kind of help from the US, perhaps American air cover, that's a huge temptation, a huge motivation. The idea that they would be partnered up with the most powerful military in the world, the US military, to achieve their goals inside Iran.
Holly Williams, thank you so much for joining us on this breaking news.
That was a big development. Now that Iran has its next supreme leader, one will need to wait and watch how Israel and US are going to react to it, who had been wanting somebody of their choosing to take the reins in Iran. Now, an Iranian official has said that the country is engulfed in flames, smoke and acid rain worries after Israel and US attacks on 5 oil storage facilities in and around Tehran have overwhelmed the country. Ismail Baghel, Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson, accused the US and Israel of committing war crimes by targeting Iran's energy infrastructure. He said these attacks on fuel storage facilities amount to nothing less than intentional chemical warfare against the Iranian citizens. In response, US Energy Secretary Chris Wright downplayed the attack, said America will spare Iran's energy infrastructure. He also said these are Israeli strikes and these are local fuel depots to fill up the gas tank. The US is targeting zero energy infrastructure and there are no plans to target Iran's oil industry. No plans to target their natural gas industry either, or anything about their energy industry. Now, quoting journalists, AFP reported a cloud blanketing Tehran. And this was a result of smoke that had accumulated from fires that had burned all night. According to reports, residents noticed a burning smell in the air, with many claiming the sky seemed black and rain. And this is amid rain, even as the sun rose. The Iranian Red Crescent said the explosions at the oil depots discharged significant quantities of toxic hydrocarbon compounds, sulfur and nitrogen oxides into the atmosphere. Red Crescent warned of skin burns, severe lung damage from the extremely dangerous and highly acidic rain. Iranian environmental officials recommended people to stay indoors to avoid respiratory difficulties and other health risks. CEO of National Iranian Oil Products Distribution Company, Keramat Vesgarami, said that the risk of acid rain was high as Iran's oil depots had sufficient gasoline reserves. Acid rain is any form of precipitation, rain, snow, fog or dust with high levels of sulfuric and nitric acids. Separately, Iran's IRNA news agency, citing the country's National Center for Nuclear Safety Systems, said a gamma radiation facility in Iran's Isfahan province was severely damaged, but no radiation pollution was reported. Iran has now threatened proportionate strikes on regional oil sites if Israel and US continue to hit the country's energy infrastructure. Meanwhile, in what the IDF called an extensive series of airstrikes, Iranian regime sites in Tehran and other cities. They were targeted as Israel continues to pound the Islamic Republic.
Hello to you from Abu Dhabi, the capital of the United Arab Emirates, dragged into the Middle East war because American troops are stationed here. Iranian drones and missiles have been shot out of the sky above us today, while in Iran itself, US and Israeli strikes have been relentless. The country has tonight named Mojtaba Khomeini as its new supreme leader after the assassination of his father, Ayatollah Khomeini. Iran says it won't bow in the face of bullying. The Iranian ambassador to the UN has said more than 1,300 civilians have now been killed since the war began. Israel's military claims it carried out around 3,400 strikes on Iran last week, while BBC Verify has confirmed visual evidence of more than 100 areas where attacks have taken place. Oil depots in and around Tehran have been hit by intense US-Israeli aerial bombardment, with local people reporting multiple explosions today. Well, in a moment, Faisal Islam will take a look at the economic effects of the conflict as global oil supplies drop. But first, Lise Doucette, our chief international correspondent, has our top story tonight on day 9 of the war.
Hell on earth. That's how someone living in this dark described it. Tehran was on fire last night, the Sharon oil depot in flames. One of 30 Israel said it bombed across Iran. The biggest attack in this war on the country's oil facilities, the lifeblood of its economy. Fire tore through the streets toward shops and homes, into ancient water channels. They're meant to irrigate the trees, cool the city, not burn it. Hassan had been heading to the depot at dusk when the first missile struck.
I turned the truck around on the street so it would be away from the danger. But then when they fired the first missile, 2 more struck right afterwards. The first one struck right over there. Then the gasoline started flowing towards the residential areas.
Today, Tehran was shrouded in toxic smoke. When the rain came, it was black too. Some residents spoke of their suffering in messages sent to the BBC's Persian service.
They've blown it up. Oil depot, Hisar and Baghestan areas. It was as if the night has suddenly turned into day.
The city is really covered in smoke. You can smell the burning. I can't see the sun. There is a horrible smoke. It's still there. I'm very tired. I've been indoors the whole time.
The port city of Bushehr in the south was also targeted. These satellite images show the impact at its naval base, including a capsized vessel at its jetty. The airbase was hit too. This is what it looks like now. Iran is still hitting back. Fragments of an intercepted missile struck this home in Tel Aviv. The emergency services say 8 people were injured today in waves of missile barrages. Some managed to get through Israel's prized air defenses. But Israel and the US say their campaign is succeeding faster than expected.
What we are aiming for is very clear objectives. One, Iran cannot have nuclear capability, and they were rushing again to that capability. Number 2, their long-range missiles. It's also a golden opportunity for the people of Iran to rise up and bring change. We leave it up to them.
And now, there's a new target. Tonight, State TV made the long-awaited announcement. Mojtaba Khomeini is Iran's new supreme leader. He assumes his father's mantle. In his mold, a hardliner, close to the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guards. The man President Trump didn't want, the leader Israel says is in their sights. The commander-in-chief, in charge of Iran's existential battle. Lise Doucette, BBC News.
Tonight, it's been confirmed a 7th US service member has died from injuries sustained last week in an Iranian attack on troops in Saudi Arabia. Well, Sarah Smith is live at the White House for us now. Is there any reaction so far from the Oval Office, Sarah, to the news of a new supreme leader?
Well, we had already heard from Donald Trump that the Ayatollah's son was an unacceptable choice. He dismissed him as a lightmate. And he has already said that anyone who hasn't been approved by him, who was chosen to lead Iran, wouldn't last for very long. So we haven't heard from him directly yet since the announcement was made, but he's made his views very clear about this. And that just feeds into the confusion that there is about exactly what it is the US is trying to achieve in Iran, because we hear from them variously that they want to stop Iran's nuclear program and stop it developing nuclear weapons and destroy its conventional weapons. But then we also hear Donald Trump talking about regime change, demanding unconditional surrender from the Iranian regime, while at the same time he put out a post on Truth Social this weekend criticising Sir Keir Starmer for being too late in joining a war he said had already been won. And now we learned today he's even contemplating putting US troops into Iran, putting American boots on the ground to try to grab and destroy the stockpiles of rich uranium that there are in that country. So you can see that there's a real contrast between the tactical military successes the regime is able to boast about and the lack of any clear strategy as to what those strikes actually want to achieve in Iran.
Sarah, thank you for that. Sarah Smith, our North America editor there, live at the White House. Well, there have been more Iranian attacks right across this Gulf region, not just here in Abu Dhabi, with strikes affecting several states, Saudi Arabia. And the officials there have released pictures which they say show them destroying a number of drones. But 2 people were reportedly killed when a projectile came down in an area southeast of the capital, Riyadh. The King of Bahrain has given a rare speech condemning Iran over unprecedented and unjustifiable attacks on his country and its allies. While Dubai International Airport was targeted yesterday, but more passengers have been able to fly today. And Kuwait has been hit by drones with a strike on an office building in Kuwait City. Attacks last week on Gulf states and their energy facilities sent oil prices soaring. As the war progresses, is further disruption ahead? Here's Faisal Islam.
Given the extraordinary developments in the Gulf, the oil markets have actually been calmer than might have been expected after the shutdown in energy flows. But this weekend, scenes of damage and some destruction at energy facilities, both in Iran and across the Gulf, are set to shake markets further in the coming days and hours. A fifth of both the crude oil and shipped natural gas trade flows through this narrow strait between Iran and Oman. It has been more or less shut for a week now, shutting in jet fuels and fertilisers as well as oil and gas. The question, will this last the rest of the month or even longer? In addition to this, Iran's energy facilities were hit hard this weekend, with much talk about its main export facility, Karg Island. Iran has, in recent days, hit energy facilities in many Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Qatar. And that could have a longer-term impact.
Major oil producers in the region have actually started to cut production. Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, we know Qatar has cut production of liquefied natural gas. All of this will add to prices, in the next few weeks to months.
The price of petrol and diesel is going up noticeably, and that's being felt in forecourts across the world, including the USA.
Everybody got bills and stuff. Now the gas is going way back up again.
Man, we're all going to have to get electric cars or something. But now, I don't know what's going on.
All of this has come from the oil price up about 25% to over $93 a barrel on Friday, and many in the markets anticipate it hitting $100 in the coming days. When President Trump's energy secretary spoke to CNN, he tried to calm markets.
There are no plans to target Iran's oil industry, their natural gas industry, or anything about their energy industry. If these are Israeli strikes.
An oil blockage is one thing. But as Gulf nations like the UAE repeatedly engage Iranian drones, the targeting of critical energy infrastructure in almost every Gulf country takes this into much more volatile territory. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
And we've got some news for you that's just come in the last few seconds. In early trading in Asia, Brent crude oil prices have now topped $100 a barrel, a significant milestone. Much more on that from Faisal a little later on in the programme. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Defence says British fighter jets have shot down an Iranian drone heading towards Iraq last night. While today, Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump have been discussing military cooperation. Now, it comes after the President once again criticised the UK's response to the war, suggesting the US no longer needed the naval ships Britain is poised to send to the Middle East. Here's Damien Grammaticus.
RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire, now a staging post for US aircraft to and from the Middle East. The Prime Minister and the US President discussed this military cooperation in their phone call this afternoon, the first since the start of the war last weekend. Missions from here, Downing Street said, are only for the collective defence of the UK's partners in the region. Donald Trump has taken offence at Sir Keir's decisions, including the news the UK is preparing an aircraft carrier for possible deployment.
We don't need them. It's not the right time. It would have been nice to have had them 2 weeks ago.
Mr. Trump was also offended that Sir Keir did not agree to let US planes use British bases in the opening salvos of the US war on Iran. The Foreign Secretary was asked about this souring of relations.
It's for the US President to decide what he thinks is in the US national interest, and that's for him to do. But it is our job as the UK government to decide what's in the UK national interest. And that doesn't mean simply agreeing with other countries or outsourcing our foreign policy.
A Labour Prime Minister who did go along with the US President, Tony Blair, who joined George Bush's 2003 invasion of Iraq. That decision was highly controversial. Over a decade later, an official inquiry said the case for war was not justified, there was no imminent threat, and the plans for the aftermath were wholly inadequate. Mr. Blair is now part of Trump's Gaza Board of Peace. At a private speech in the US on Friday, he said the UK should have backed America from the beginning in this war too.
Having been a minister in the last Labour government, I also think it is important to learn lessons from what went wrong in Iraq.
Those lessons, Keir Starmer says, are to decide whether any action is lawful and part of a properly thought-through plan before the UK joins in.
That's what Keir Starmer has been doing, and I think he's right to stand up for Britain and Britain's interests.
Meanwhile, the destroyer HMS Dragon, which is being deployed to protect Cyprus and the British base there, may leave in the next couple of days.
It can't get to sea, it can't get welders and spare parts. They're sat on the equipment programme, and they have been for some time. They have got to start taking it seriously.
Reform UK say the ship should have been deployed already, but British pilots should not be involved in attacks on Iran.
For us to be deploying British airmen in bombing raids over Iran right now, when our allies have not asked us to do that, then no, I don't think that's necessary. We shouldn't be endangering British personnel unnecessarily.
Keir Starmer has invested much in trying to build a relationship with Donald Trump, but the decisions this war has presented mean it's already on shaky ground. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News.
We're going to get a little bit more from Damien, who's in Downing Street a little later. But first, Duncan Kennedy is at RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire, where more US warplanes have been arriving. RAF Fairford, Duncan, seems to be taking on quite an important role in this war.
It really is, Clive. The tempo of activity has really picked up in the past couple of days or so. Just today, 2 giant Globemaster transport aircraft touched down here. And in the past 48 hours, 4 B-1 bombers have landed here. Why Fairford? Well, it's all about refueling. Fairford's equidistant between the east coast of the United States and Iran, about 3,000 miles either way. And of course, the Americans can only use this base and the one in the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia, after getting permission from Sir Keir Starmer on the basis that all missions are defensive in nature. And that's okay for the B-1 bomber. It can carry up to 24 cruise missiles, very accurate, that can take out drone sites or ballistic missile sites and stop them launching their weapons against British bases in the region and Allied bases as well. But what if 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line, the Americans come back and say, we'd like to start using these bases for offensive weapons and offensive missions, well then the debate, the tensions between the United Kingdom and the United States will start all over again.
And Damien, what more do we know from the MOD about this British fighter jet shooting down an Iranian drone heading towards Iraq last night?
Clive, very little on that other than simply that missile was heading for, or that drone was heading for Iraq. The important thing there, I think, is the message that the government wants it to be known that the UK is involved in the region, even if it's in those defensive actions. Now, I think what is important, though, is that phone call, the first between Keir Starmer here and President Trump since the first day of the war. We know it was about 20 minutes long. We know very little about what was in it. Now, that might be perhaps because there were sensitive things being discussed. It might perhaps indicate that it was not an easy conversation. We don't know. But this war has presented not just the government, but all the parties here with difficult decisions and choices. The Conservatives, for example, say we should be taking part in those offensive actions in Iran. That leaves them open to the charge made by the Lib Dems that that would be reckless. Reform want to kind of face both ways, criticise the government for slow deployments, but actually have the same position on strikes. The government, I think, feels is treading that difficult path while trying not to alienate President Trump.
All right, Damien Grammaticus outside number 10 and Duncan Kennedy at RAF Fairford. Thanks for joining us. We've entered another phase in this war. After the Iranian leadership was attacked, then came strikes on command and control centers, military barracks, missile and drone launchers, as well as the factories that make them. Now it's the economic infrastructure of Iran that's under threat, with the oil industry being hit. Life for millions of Iranians, which was already intolerable in this conflict, is now actually getting worse.
All right, and we want to bring you some breaking news now. We have word that the new supreme leader has been announced, and that will be Mojtaba Khomeini. That is the supreme leader's son. Joining us now to talk more about this is Ali Hashim, who has extensively covered Iran and has been following this leadership selection process very closely. Ali, what can you tell us about what we can expect now that the supreme leader has been named?
Well, now, first of all, that Mojtaba Khomeini has been announced officially as Iran's third supreme leader. This is the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new chapter at the time of war. So Mojtaba Khomeini is now supposed to lead the country in the time of war. Of course, this election would have a lot of controversy given the fact that he is succeeding his father. There are going to be accusations of family succession. You know, the Islamic revolution came in 1979 to end the monarchy. So this is going to be one of the issues that he will face as an accusation. Yet he will have to lead the country at a very difficult time. There are security threats to him. The United States, Israel, both are threatening to kill him, just like they did with his father. So there is going to be a lot of challenges facing him, first of all, to lead the country in the time of war, and at the same time to make sure to bring together the Iranians at the time when they are already divided. You know, just a few weeks ago there were protests in the country, so it's going to be a really very heavy challenge for him.
Do we know much about who he is? I mean, we obviously know who his father is, we know who his family is, but do we know much about him, what he stands for, and what he could stand for going forward, given that we are in extraordinary circumstances here? Well,
Mojtaba Khomeini comes from the school of theology that is known to be, I mean, it's described as a hardline school. He adopts the positions of his father with respect to the United States, with respect to Israel. So we are expecting a confrontational leader. We're not expecting any moderation. We're not expecting any negotiation-seeking leader. However, if this war comes to an end and he is still alive and he is able to continue running the country, there is going to be a big potential seeing him there at this position to find new routes for Iran. This is one. On the second side, he is, of course, a cleric that's been teaching the highest levels of religious studies. And at the same time, he is well connected within the country. He's been described as a shadow influencer in the country. And over here, I'm talking about political influence.
Right.
So he has very good connections with the IRGC, very good connections with the security body of the country.
So these other branches of the country will know who they're about to be dealing with?
They know him very well because he used to be his father's gatekeeper. And any coordination with other power bases or centers in the country used to be through him. So he knows very well the country. He knows very well how things are run in the country. And given the fact his connections with IRGC and the security body, this could give him a lot of leverage. Also, he has his own he's part of the deep state. So he used to influence political changes in the country, and he's well aware of what's going on around him. So given the fact he is coming to succeed from the position of someone who knew how the situation is, he is a continuation of his father's reign for 37 years. We'll see another Khamenei coming to power. However, we're seeing a younger Khamenei, probably with also some new ideas. He's not a copy of his father, but the
influence may be there
still. We've never heard him talking.
Right.
We've never seen him except in some very rare pictures. So we are yet to hear from him, and we are yet to see how he is going to deal with the new status quo. I mean, his country is in the middle of war. How is he going to deal in the situation of war? How is he going to emerge from this war? These are all going to kind of define his own leadership.
And given that we haven't seen him speak publicly, that we don't know much about maybe which track he is going to take, for people who may have been thinking that potentially a new supreme leader could be a route to diplomacy, a route to opening those diplomatic channels, in your estimation, is that likely to be the case?
Well, for now, no. This is a confrontational leader. He comes on, his father's blood was just shed a few days ago, 10 days ago. So he holds this legacy, he carries this legacy, the legacy of his father's blood. So he's the son of the martyr in the eyes of the revolution. And this is part of the legacy, or let me say legitimacy, that he is, or his team is trying to present him within. So he's the son of the martyr who came to take the revenge for the martyr. This is the revolutionary Iran's point, perspective. Now, how is he going to be received by others? Because inside Iran, of course, there's going to be a pushback. There's going to be those who are going to criticize this selection or this election, because some of them will believe, especially within the other parties under the Islamic Republic, they're going to see this as changing the pillars of the Republic and changing the pillars of the revolution that came in 1979.
So there's many things to watch. I want to bring Mohammed Val back in from Tehran for us, because, Mohammed, one of the things that we've been talking about is how Israel has been saying that they will be looking out for who is named the next supreme leader, that person is in danger, that person is in their sights, and so are the people who elected this new supreme leader. I wonder, how do you think they're going to be able to secure him, or what kind of danger he'll be under as of right now that his name's been announced?
Right, that's a very big question here in Iran, and also the election of Mojtaba Khomeini is clearly an act of defiance on the part of the Iranian leadership here, because he's the man President Trump mentioned in name, saying that he's a lightweight, and he's in the position now that Israel has threatened to kill him anyways. So, I mean, it's really a precarious situation for the new supreme leader, and probably the delay in announcing his name has to do with preparations to make sure that he's safe. We don't know how that is going to be done, but we know that the Israelis just 2 nights ago sent 50 aircraft and dropped 100 bombs, according to what they said, on a location that was, they said a bunker that was to be used by the late Khomeini, but he didn't have time to go into it, and that they had information that probably some of the leaders were hiding in that bunker the night the raid took place. So the Israelis are really, serious in their threats. The Americans also are going to be unhappy, according to what we heard from President Trump. Here, the message by the Iranians is that this is an act or decision that is an act of defiance. The Iranians are not listening to foreign recommendations or foreign control of their country. The country is independent. Iran selects its own leaders according to its own constitution. And also on the part of the new supreme leader himself, it's an act of potential sacrifice. He knows the probable consequences of his election, and he has chosen to go ahead and assume this role. We understand that as per the Iranian political traditions and constitution, the supreme leader in waiting does not present his own candidacy for that. He does not suggest himself. So he must have been chosen by others, but he also has to consent to that. And that is the situation now. The new supreme leader has been announced. It's an act of defiance. He knows the consequences, and the country is bracing for probable assassination also, but the Iranians are defiant.
And Ali, Mohammed makes a very good point that, number one, there's no evidence that the American president had any hand in making this selection as he wanted to do. And two, obviously, Khamenei will know now that there is a big target on his back. But I wonder how you think people in Iran on the streets of Tehran will react when they hear this news.
Well, they're already hearing now. So, as I told you, there is going to be a lot of controversy when it comes to this selection. There are those who are going to embrace it, given the fact that Mojtaba Khomeini is now positioned as the son of the martyr and also the father of a martyr, because his daughter was killed in the attack, his wife was killed in the attack, his sister was killed in the attack, his mother was killed in the attack, and his father also. So he comes from this family. This is easier for the system in Iran to push forward Khamenei's name, Mojtaba Khomeini's name, because he holds all this baggage with him. And given the fact this is an Islamic system, and mainly it's the Shia side of Islam that is built upon martyrdom, so this could help him a lot in proving himself at the time of war. Yet, politically, there is going to be a lot of pushback. This is going to probably have its own impact, not now, probably after the war, because now it's time of war. Everyone is caring more on how the country is going to continue. So the debate right now is going to be more at the moment of war on the continuity, rather on what happened and how this is really hitting the pillars of the revolution.
And Mohammed, to you, Ali was talking about how the new supreme leader is going to be a wartime supreme leader, and he's coming out of this immediately in this system of war. But there will also be many domestic issues to contend to as well. So I wonder what are going to be the main things that he'll be dealing with within the country, not just from a period of war.
Well, the primary on that list could be national consensus over him. He's a sort of unknown figure, even though he's very well known, but he's unknown in terms of his personality because he doesn't speak a lot, he doesn't attend a lot of meetings and gatherings and so on, but he is known to be one of the hardliners, and he's known to be very close to the Revolutionary Guard and to the Basij. So, I mean, for some people, particularly the reformists, they may not be happy with his election. because they think that we are back to the square one. We have been trying to change the country to what we like, to the better, closer to liberalism and so on. But now and this is understandable, because at a time of war you need strong leaders. You need leaders who will stick to the line of resistance, of defiance, and so on. And probably the Assembly of Experts have put that into consideration at this particular moment. The appointment of someone, for instance, like Hassan Rouhani, who is seen here as a very compromising leader, who some people even describe him as the Gorbachev of Iran, a person who is very likely to strike deals that might compromise the interests of Iran. Well, I'm just saying what is being circulated here. Mm-hmm. The selection of that person could be seen inside Iran and even outside Iran as an act of some kind of surrender to the will of the Americans and the Israelis at a time of war. So the Iranis don't like to be seen as showing weakness here. And the hardline approach that has led to the election of this new supreme leader is a result in the minds of many people here of what is going on, of the aggression against Iran, and Iran needs really to show toughness.
And Ali, your thoughts on that?
Well, there is something really ironical here. When Khomeini, the father, was elected at the time when the war was ending, the war between Iraq and Iran in 1989, it was like the beginning of the end. And now Khomeini, the son, is being elected in the middle of a war. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing two different paths. And this is going also to shape Mojtaba Khomeini's experience in his, this all depends on whether the Iranian security and military will be able to preserve his life, to keep him away from assassinations, to defend him. These are all challenges that the security and military system are going to face, besides what he's going to face. Also, from now on, there is going to be one man taking the decisions in this war. At least he is going to be directing. I mean, there is an institution that helps in taking the decision, but yet we will see his own approach, and how this approach is going to be. Probably within the coming hours, we should be hearing from him. We should be hearing his manifesto. We should be hearing what he is promising the Iranian people, the region, and the world.
All right, Ali Hashem here with me, and Mohammed Val in Tehran. Thank you both for your analysis on this breaking news. Now let's bring in some of our guests to discuss these latest developments. Mark Kimmett is a retired American general and a former assistant secretary for political military affairs. He's in Washington, D.C., and in Boston, we have Rami Khouri, a distinguished fellow at the American University of Beirut. Thank you both for being with us. General Kimmett, I will go to you first. How does the election of the new supreme leader change the strategy of the U.S. and Israel in this, if at all?
Candidly, I don't think it changes anything except for the aggressive talk by Benjamin Netanyahu that he is going to end the theocracy inside the country, and anybody they pick as a supreme leader will be eliminated. But in many ways, this adds a little stability to the situation. And if you're like me, where I believe this war will end at the negotiating table, this is a movement towards stability.
Rami, I want to bring you in on this because I'd like to get your thoughts as well. Just right off the top on this breaking news of Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khomeini, the son of the former supreme leader, being named. What are your initial thoughts when you hear that name?
Well, Riley, I think this kind of confirms what General Kimmett said, and this is a continuation of what Iran has had since 1979. This is the Wilayat al-Faqih, the ruling system, with clerical rule under a supreme leader, with the addition of the IGRC, the Republican Guard, the National Republican Guard, the Revolutionary Guards. And these are institutions that are very well established, and the guards are the most important institution in the whole country, probably with the clerics. But they control business, they control guns, they control management of the system in many ways, and they're massive, and they control hundreds of thousands of people that they can bring to the streets. So I think this is a sign of continuity. Whether it ends up pushing for a negotiated resolution of ending the war, what will happen after that will be seen, because it'll be totally different circumstances. How much the Iranian people suffer, how much people keep threatening it. So these are unknown factors. But for the moment, I think this is kind of an act of defiance as well, telling the Americans and the Israelis, you wanted to get rid of our system? Well, in your face, here's a more radical person than the guy who was his father who was assassinated. And so this is a sign of continuity, and we'll see what that brings.
And General Commit, this supreme leader is coming in at a time when we're seeing attacks escalating to different civilian targets, things like oil depots, oil storage facilities. How is this advancing the escalation of the war?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't consider infrastructure targets to be civilian targets. They're part of the economy. They're not civilians. But again, I think if you look at it from the Israeli side... But sorry,
just to ask you on that, so what is a civilian target then? Is it just civilians?
Primarily, yes. Civilian military facilities, just generally human beings, as opposed to structures. Now, going back to your question about Mojtaba, I think there's going to be a dispute inside the Israeli-U.S. discussions about how do we react to this. Again, as somebody who thinks that negotiations, tough negotiations, negotiations that the Iranians have to come into already providing concessions, this can't happen unless you have a supreme leader make those decisions. And with the stability that a new supreme leader brings, no matter how much you don't like him, at least we might be able to move the process forward.
Do you think that that's likely to happen?
Well, again, Rami knows this much better than I do, but the sensing is that he is closer to the hardliners than the clerics. The clerics did not want a dynasty and are against a dynastic control of the supreme leader's position. But given his hardliner positions, this sort of complements, for example, the bringing back of Vahidi, who founded the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, dusted him off and put him back in to head the IRGC when his predecessor was disposed of. So I don't think you can make any declarative, definitive statements right now. I think we're going to have to wait a few days.
We begin tonight with breaking news and a sobering reminder of the human cost of war. Another U.S. service member has died after being wounded in last week's attack in Saudi Arabia. This is a defiant Iran has named a new supreme leader just 1 week after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in the early hours of the war. And just moments ago, state media announced his 56-year-old son has been named his successor. But President Trump told ABC News before that announcement that Iran's next leader, quote, is not going to last long. Israel is also echoing similar sentiments, and massive fires are raging across Tehran after Israeli strikes target oil refineries. This war is now 8 days old. We have team coverage once again tonight. ABC's chief international correspondent James Longman leads us off from Iraq.
Tonight, another American service member has died in the war against Iran. CENTCOM announcing that an American wounded in an Iranian strike on a base in Saudi Arabia a week ago passed away from their injuries last night. The news coming a day after President Trump attended the dignified transfer of the first American casualties, 6 soldiers killed in the early hours of the U.S.-Israeli offensive at their base in Kuwait. President Trump yesterday signaled that more U.S. personnel might make the ultimate sacrifice.
They're great heroes in our country, and we're going to keep it that way. There's always, when it comes to war, there's always that. But we're going to keep it to a minimum, I think.
And just over a week since the killing of Ayatollah Khomeini, Iran is tonight reportedly naming his successor. Iranian state TV says his son, Mojtaba Khomeini, has been named. Israel says whoever is chosen will automatically become a target, and Khomeini is expected to follow the hard line of his father, meaning his election may not change the trajectory of this war. And it is expanding on every front. Israel is now targeting energy infrastructure. This huge attack today on an oil depot in Tehran sent poisonous fumes into the air for miles around. Residents were warned to protect themselves against toxic fumes. Israel calls this a terrorist target, but civilians will feel the cost of this too. Iran says well over 1,000 people have been killed so far, including 190 children and 198 women. Tonight, CENTCOM is issuing a warning to Iranian civilians, saying Tehran positions military targets in built-up areas. With the internet blocked inside Iran, civilian voices are difficult to hear. But ABC has made contact with some, like Hamid, who tells us, honestly, hope is difficult to find. The truly frightening possibility is that the United States might suddenly leave the Iranian people alone with these rulers. Israel's offensive against Hezbollah in Lebanon is widening too. Lebanese authorities say more than 400 people are now dead, 83 of them children, 42 women. Hundreds of thousands have been displaced. And despite US and Israeli assurances that Tehran's missile and drone stock is severely depleted, the regime is still able to lash out at targets across this region. A desalination plant in Bahrain hit in a drone attack. And this government office building in Kuwait City ablaze.
And James, just before we came on the air, we learned that Iran had chosen a successor to the supreme leader who was killed at the start of the war. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, Mojtaba Khomeini. He is the 56-year-old second son of the former Ayatollah. He is, of course, also a cleric. He's considered to have been close to his father, often seen alongside him at public events. Also close to the brutal religious militia, the Basij, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. And Donald Trump has said that Mojtaba Khomeini would be unacceptable to him as supreme leader. Lindsay?
James Longman in Iraq for us again tonight. James, thank you.
We had a chance to ask President Trump about a new superpower joining this fight on the Iranian side of epic fury.
President Trump, it sounds like the Russians are helping Iran target and attack Americans now.
That's an easy problem compared to what we're doing here. I mean, but can I be honest? It's just, I have a lot of respect for you. You've always been very nice to me. What a stupid question that is to be asking at this time. We're talking about something else. Can we keep this maybe a little bit?
And just a few minutes ago, the Iranians confirmed Russia is helping.
Are you receiving any help from Russia?
Well, we have a strategic partnership with Russia.
So that's a yes?
And well, a military cooperation between Iran and Russia is not something new. It's not a secret. It has been in the past and it's still there and will continue in the future.
General David Petraeus, retired four-star general. What should President Trump do about this?
Well, he should ask Congress to pass the sanctions bill that is in the Senate. Senator Lindsey Graham has led the effort, very close to President Trump, of course. He has over 90 out of 100 senators supporting it. It would be a very powerful signal to Russia. It would complement what the EU has done, which has been very impressive in this regard as well. And I think it's long since time that the sanctions are slapped on Russia, especially now that apparently they're providing the intelligence, which is so very important to the targeting that Iran does. They do not have the kind of intelligence that Russia can share with them and is apparently. And that explains some of the accuracy of the missiles and the drone strikes.
And epic fury has been going on for more than a week. We've already seen a part of the Pentagon playbook that we've never seen before, the part where the U.S. has reverse engineered some of these lethal Iranian drones. Listen to this.
You used to always hear, we're shooting down a $50,000 drone with a $2 million missile. These days, we're spending a lot of time shooting down $100,000 drones with $10,000 weapons from ours. So that's one aspect of it. Lucas, indispensable, as many of you know, and if you don't know, this was an original Iranian drone design. We captured it, pulled the guts out, sent it back to America, put a little Made America on it, brought it back here.
General, how often does the United States military reverse engineer a weapon to use it against the people who invented it?
Pretty rarely, I suspect. We've certainly taken weapons from different battlefields around the world and sorted out what they consist of, what the capabilities are, what their vulnerabilities are, so that we can develop weapons that can deal with those. You know, we famously brought tanks out, infantry fighting vehicles, others over the years. But no, I'm not aware of something like this in the past and then turning around and using it on the same enemy. What we should also be doing, though, is we should be learning from what the Ukrainians have done, which is nothing short of spectacular, and on a scale that is way, way beyond what we're doing. When I was last there about 4 or 5 weeks ago, they told me that they will all together, all the companies, produce about 7 million drones this year. I think we'll produce 4 or maybe 500,000. So the scale of what they're doing and also the capability of what they have and the low cost of what they have is something from which we should learn as well.
Those numbers are staggering. Something else, we know that there is a campaign in the sky. There could also soon be boots on the ground, though, in Iran, according to President Trump aboard Air Force One last night.
Could there be? Possibly, for very good reason. Have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level.
There's some new reporting this morning, various outlets, that the president is talking about maybe going in and securing some of the uranium facilities that are possibly unsecured. What do you think? Should the president put boots on the ground in Iran?
Well, what I do think is that he shouldn't rule them out, and I think he's been correct in doing that. I think that previous presidents have prematurely ruled out various options that we should have kept alive, at least in the mind of the enemy. I think he'll be very, very careful in making that decision and carrying out whatever might be done. It's possible you could have some sneakers on the ground, some of the individuals from my organization perhaps helping some of the opposition elements, maybe some very special operations forces members or something, but they're not going to be on the front lines. They'll be the advise, assist, and enable elements. There's been talk of actually seizing Karg Island, which is the big oil export location. It's just offshore, well up into the Gulf. And then again, the report that you mentioned about going in to secure the uranium. I suspect that the massive ordnance penetrator would probably obviate the need for that, the 30,000-pound precision munition that only we have, and only we have a plane that can drop it. But I'm sure he'll weigh this very, very carefully, having repeatedly noted the challenges of boots on the ground in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
And it sounds like so far, according to the president, the top 2 tiers of the Iranian leaders have been totally wiped out. Now there are many mini Iranian command posts spread out all over the country. The Wall Street Journal calls it a mosaic. This is part of their piece. It says, the plan includes implementing a so-called mosaic defense, a decentralized approach that allows individual commanders the autonomy to keep up the fight if cut off from their superiors. You have studied wars in the Middle East for a long time. Can this kind of a mosaic defense that the Iranians are doing actually hold up?
Oh, it can, absolutely. You're talking about a regime force in total. So you're talking about the Revolutionary Guards Corps, the regime force, the besieged militia, the pipe swingers killing people on the streets during demonstrations, national police, the regular Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine. This is 1 million men under arms who have shown a willingness to kill their own citizens in the tens of thousands in January alone during the demonstrations. And they have it very obvious, I think, from the very beginning, because we took out the senior leaders, took out their headquarters, their means of command, control, communications, and so forth. So it was very clear that there has been a delegation of authority, a decentralization, as you termed it, to a number of these lower and mid-level leaders to continue the fight with the assets that they have on hand. And of course, what we've been doing is trying to go after, in particular, the missile launchers and missile stockpiles, and then we'll do the factories as well as now the drones. We've had great success against the missiles. Their launch numbers are down by nearly 90% or so, but there still are some coming. The drones have been a bit more steady, and those have been problematic, even though a number of the countries in the region, especially the UAE, have done very impressively against them and have been taking them down with low-cost, short-range air defense systems rather than $2 million Patriot missile interceptors. That's not good math.
And General Petraeus, my last question. It seems like the beginning parts of Epic Fury have been a big success, overall a big success for the United States. As you look at this, what is your biggest worry about the next couple weeks?
Well, I think President Trump actually captured it quite well, and I thought he was very forthright in stating that the worst outcome would be that the regime survives and another hardline ideological cleric takes the place of Khamenei. That would be problematic. That would mean that we're going to see this again and perhaps again. That's very challenging for a region which has built its brand around security and great infrastructure and great opportunities, visionary leadership, and so forth. So I think that's a huge concern. There's another number of ancillary concerns that are not trivial. The price of Brent crude. We're watching, it is now well over $93 a barrel. It was in the low to mid 60s before all of this started. It could go higher if the markets sense that freedom of navigation through the Gulf and then the Strait of Hormuz, and then on the other side, the Bab el-Mandeb, where the Yemeni Houthis have disrupted operations over time, and we think that might start again. That could be problematic as well. Really, I think it's going to come down, though, to a sense of how well have we done against the military objectives, noting that it's not the military's job to bring about regime change. It's the military's job to create conditions in which political transition could take place if, in fact, there is sufficient internal opposition to the regime. But again, keeping in mind that that regime is nearly 1 million men under arms, you'd have to have a very considerable force, people who are armed, organized, capable, well-led, to take that on. And I think that's why most analysts right now believe that the base case is the regime survives. Then the question is, what is the character of the new supreme leader? Will he be a bit pragmatic or not? And if or not, then there are going to be further challenging times ahead.
General David Petraeus, that was great. And you set up our next block perfectly. So thank you very much for coming to the Sunday briefing.
Good to be with you, Peter. Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
Welcome back. As Operation Epic Fury continues, Axios is now reporting that the U.S. is weighing sending special forces to seize Iran's nuclear stockpile. According to the report, the U.S. and Israel have discussed sending the troops to secure the country's highly enriched uranium at a later stage in the conflict. But it would likely only take place after Iran cannot mount a serious threat to the forces involved. UN Ambassador Mike Waltz signaled this may be under consideration.
Unlike his predecessors, both Obama and Biden, President Trump is never going to take options off the table. I'm a former special operator. We have troops and assets that are focused on seizing weapons of mass destruction if needed and if so ordered.
Joining us now, former Navy SEAL and author of The Fourth Option, Jack Carr. Jack, thanks for joining us. I think it'd be important to point out you also wrote an amazing book on Beirut, just in your words and probably my opinion, kind of the root cause of a lot of this, or at least the opening salvo. When we talk about this, I think a lot of Americans don't understand military strategy, as they shouldn't. I understand that. But we use this term boots on the ground, and I think everyone goes to a vision of 100,000 troops sitting at al-Assad. And I think that this conversation is both premature and it's kind of semantics because it goes in a completely different direction. We're talking about using strategic units to accomplish strategic goals, not unlike what we saw in Venezuela, where we find out after they're in and out less than setting up bases and that kind of thing, or at least that's how it seems to me.
Well, that's right. And I saw that video of Ambassador Mike Waltz earlier talking about this. And of course, those of us who are on the ground there, as soon as we hear boots on the ground, we're immediately skeptical. But in this one here, one of our main objectives is to ensure that Iran will never have a nuclear weapons capability. That has been a pillar of U.S. foreign policy across multiple administrations from both parties. And use the Venezuela example. There's another example from about 1.5 years ago where the Israelis mounted a very audacious special operations mission into Syria. And the purpose of that mission was to go inside underground into a Hezbollah precision missile facility and blow it up from the inside. So they had pre-assault fires, they had standoff weapon systems that took out early warning radars and anti-aircraft devices. They went in, dropped about 100 special operators off who went inside, blew it up from the inside, also destroyed a Russian listening post, interestingly enough, and captured a couple Iranian scientists who were also there in Syria. So similar to what our special operations forces and Israel's would probably face in Iran if they go there to, and I know Mike Waltz said to seize these facilities, but seizing and destroying are different. I mean, he might just be thinking about his language, being very careful about it, because when you seize this, how long do you then hold it for? But exactly. I suspect both U.S. Special Operations Forces and Israeli Special Operations Forces are forward deployed, ready to go to carry out this mission if tasked to do so. But really, it's the Midnight Hammer from last June didn't destroy the nuclear weapons capability there. The reports I saw said it severely degraded it, but didn't destroy it. So then option 2 is to go in and destroy that from the inside.
Right. Jack, with all of your knowledge and expertise and lived experience, I just ask you to talk to the American people who are hearing certain buzzwords on TV, and they're hearing it from other networks and other pundits, and they're hearing boots on the ground, and they're hearing weapons of mass destruction, and they're getting a little bit uncomfortable. Could you kind of reassure to the best of your ability the American people who feel like they've heard this before and they've seen this song and dance? Does this feel different to you?
Well, it does feel different, but it's also, we have 20 years, our most recent experience, other than Venezuela and a couple other flashpoints, is Iraq and Afghanistan. And although there's not one model that you can apply to every situation in the world, when we hear WMD and then we hear someone say regime change and then we hear boots on the ground, then we all start to get a little bit nervous. What the hope is, and hope is never a good course of action, is that we take those lessons from the past, specifically from Iraq, and apply them to the current problem set as wisdom. We're using weapons that have never been used before in modern combat. And so this is about adapting in real time to changing conditions on the ground, because once again, you can't just take a model and drop it into a current situation and expect everything to play out the way it has in the past, because everyone is always adapting. And it's important to adapt faster than our enemy, because typically whoever adapts faster on the battlefield is going to end up on top tactically, and we need our strategic level leaders to do the same thing at their level.
And Jack, it's Joe Concha. If I told you a year ago that 9 days in that we would decimate the Iranian military in the capacity that we have in terms of ballistic missiles, in terms of their Navy being essentially not even a factor now at this point, in terms of everything, especially with Midnight Hammer and not destroying completely their nuclear capabilities, but certainly damaging it and setting it back years and years, what would you have told me? And I guess it's a two-part question. If we were to send special ops into areas to take out the nuclear facilities completely, how long would a mission like that take? So sorry, a bunch of questions there for you.
Yeah, well, the first one there, if you'd asked me a couple years ago about what this situation would look like, I'd probably go back to history and I'd say that we hadn't fought total war in a very long time, and that appears, although we're not doing it now, we're getting closer to doing that. We have been very reserved in how we have applied our military force. We haven't been very smart about how we've done that by placing our boots on the ground in harm's way, making them targets, giving the enemy a propaganda victory over us almost every single day in both Iraq and Afghanistan as those situations developed on the ground. So this is much closer to total war, although it is not yet there. But we are using the military capability, it looks like now, to its fullest extent, while taking into account, of course, the collateral damage, which we didn't think so much about in World War II, or if we thought about it, there weren't ways to mitigate that. On the second one, how long would something like that take? Well, I go back to that Israeli example because it is just a year and a half ago, and there are so many similarities to going into an underground hardened type bunker system that is protecting a weapons system that needs to be destroyed from the inside out. So that one, they were in and out of there in hours. Wow. But seizing, of course, is different than going in and then destroying or holding. So all those things are different. And once again, it comes down to adaptation. Wow.
Jack, tonight in the last couple of hours, 2.5 hours or so, we've been talking a lot about mission creep and Americans watching at home and wondering so many things with regard to Afghanistan and Iraq. And as you're watching things unfold in Iran, If you were advising this administration going forward, what would you suggest to avoid that very thing?
Well, on the messaging side of it, I wouldn't use those specifics and say never or anything like that, but I would focus on we are going to use those lessons of the past and apply them to this problem set so that we don't end up in those situations like we ended up in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is a new administration with new strategic level leaders, new elected representatives, and we are going to adapt to what's happening on the battlefield, and we will not go back to doing what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I think approaching it from that respect and how we're going to take those lessons, and that's really all you can do from 20 years in Afghanistan and all those years in Iraq, and that's how you honor those people who didn't come home or those who came home. They're still dealing with the emotional and physical scars of the battlefield, is apply those lessons to this current problem set as wisdom, and that's how we honor those people.
Yeah, Jack Carr, Navy SEAL, author. I just want to point out, Targeted Beirut is your book on Beirut. I think a lot of Americans could learn a lot about what's happening now if they went back and read it. I know you've got other books since then you probably want folks to know about, but I think that one's very apropos. And just on that, learning lessons, very different president now. Jack Carr, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Yes.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Welcome back. And joining me now is the Foreign Minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi. Mr. Foreign Minister, welcome to Meet the Press.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for being here. I have to ask you the big question on everyone's mind. Who is in charge in Iran right now?
Well, it is already known. The council of the interim leadership council is now in charge, and they are doing their act in the absence of the leader, while a new supreme leader is going to be elected soon by the Assembly of Experts. And the president and the cabinet are also doing their duties. Parliament, everything is in its place.
Well, there are reports this morning that the Iranian Assembly of Experts has come to a decision on a new supreme leader for Iran. Many have suggested it would be the son of the late supreme leader, Mojtaba Khomeini. Will he be the next leader of Iran?
Well, nobody knows. Actually, there are lots of rumors around, but we have to wait for the Assembly of Experts to convene and vote for the new supreme leader and the one who is elected by them.
Do you think he should be the next leader of Iran?
Well, anybody which is elected by the Assembly of Experts would be the next supreme leader of Iran. And as you know, the members of the assembly are already elected directly by the people.
All right. Well, President Trump says he should pick the new leader of Iran. Will Iran allow President Trump to have any role in picking its new leader?
We allow nobody to interfere in our domestic affairs. This is up to the Iranian people to elect their new leader. They have already elected the Assembly of Experts, and the Assembly of Experts would do the job. It is only the business of the Iranian people and nobody else's business.
President Trump says there will be no deal with Iran except for, quote, unconditional surrender. Will Iran agree to unconditional surrender for the sake of bringing this war to an end, Mr. Foreign Minister?
Well, this is what he asked previous time, last year in June, that when Israel started to attack us, President Trump used the same phrase, unconditional surrender. That was the tweet he made. And that didn't happen. We resisted, and after 12 days, Israelis asked for unconditional ceasefire. So we never give up, we never surrender, and we continue to resist as long as it takes. We continue to defend ourselves, and we are defending our territory, our people, and our dignity. and our dignity is not for sale.
Well, let me ask you, because what conditions would Iran accept to bring this war to an end?
Well, actually, we are not at that point yet. Obviously, this time is different from the previous time. Last time, we accepted the ceasefire. But, this time is quite different. And the reason is obvious. Last time they attacked us, they made aggression against us, they killed our people, they destroyed our places, and then asked for a ceasefire. And we accepted out of good faith because we were only exercising the act of self-defense. And when the aggression was stopped, we stopped too. But, it didn't bring about peace. And now this year, they again started to attack us. And again, they have, they are killing our people. They are killing, girl students. They are attacking hospitals, freshwater desalinations, refineries, everywhere. People have been killed. Places have been destroyed. And now they want to ask for a ceasefire again. Well, this doesn't work like this. So there should be a permanent end of the war. And unless we get to that, I think we need to, continue fighting for the sake of our people and our security.
We are going to get to the reports about some of the deaths in just a moment. But just to stay on this topic, would Iran ever agree to a ceasefire to get back to the negotiating table to end all of this military conflict?
Well, they have to explain why they started this aggression before we come to the point to even consider a ceasefire. Of course, nobody wants to continue this war. This is not our war. This is not the war of our choice. This is imposed on us by the United States, by Israelis. They have, started this war unprovoked, unwarranted, illegally, and what we are doing is legal act of self-defense, and we have every right to do that. So it is not fair that if only it stops the aggression and ask us to stop too. As I said, this time is different.
Let me ask you about some of what Iran has been doing. Iran has launched hundreds of missiles at 13 other nations in the region. On Saturday, the Iranian president apologized for those strikes on neighboring Gulf states. Was it a mistake for Iran to attack its neighbors?
Well, it is a mistake if you consider that Iran is attacking its neighbors. No, we are not attacking our neighbors. We are attacking American bases, American, installations, American assets, which are unfortunately located in the soils of our neighbors. So we are not attacking our neighbors. We are attacking Americans who are attacking us. We are retaliating. We have not started this war. It is Americans who started this war against us, attacking us, and we are defending ourselves. So it is obvious that our missiles cannot reach the U.S. Soil. What we can do is to attack American bases and American installations around us, which are unfortunately in the soils of our neighborly countries.
But Mr. Foreign Minister, if you're not attacking your neighbors, why did the Iranian president apologize?
Well, first of all, apology in our culture is a sign of dignity and strength. Secondly, he apologized from the peoples of the region for the inconveniences they have faced because of this aggression by the United States and retaliation by us. So as a matter of fact, it is in fact the President of the United States who should apologize from the people of the region and Iranian people for the killings and destructions they have done against us.
Let me ask you, because NBC News is reporting that Iran is receiving help from Russia to help locate U.S. forces. Are you receiving any help from Russia?
Well, we have a strategic partnership with Russia.
So that's a yes?
And, well, a military cooperation between Iran and Russia is not something new. It's not a secret. It has been in the past and is still there and will continue in the future.
Is Russia helping you locate U.S. forces? I just want to be very clear here.
Well, I don't have exact military information. As far as I know, we have a very good partnership with Russia.
So they are helping you. They are providing intelligence.
Well, they are helping us in many different directions. I don't have any detailed information.
Okay, let's move to the strike on the elementary school in southern Iran. It killed more than 170 people, including many children. President Trump said Iran is responsible for that strike. What is your response to what the president said?
Well, it is funny. It is our school. These are our students, our girls, and they are attacked by an American fighter, a jet fighter, and they have been killed. Why Iran is responsible? Have we started this war? Have we attacked our own people? No, we were negotiating with the United States. And in the middle of negotiations, in the middle of diplomacy, they decided to attack us. And they have attacked so many places, including schools and hospitals. And there are all evidences that this school is attacked by an American, jet fighter.
Where is the Iranian evidence that this was a U.S. attack, a jet fighter, as you say? Will you provide
it? If it was not U.S., then who was that? Maybe Israelis. But it is obvious who else is attacking us.
Well, let me move on to this question about potential ground troops. You said earlier this week on U.S. ground troops to my colleague Tom Yamas, quote, "We are waiting for them." But President Trump says the condition for sending troops to Iran would be that Iran, quote, "would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level." Is the president right? Would you not be able to fight at the ground level, Mr. Foreign Minister?
Well, at least this is not the case right now. For the time being, we are capable enough. We have very brave soldiers who are waiting for any enemy who enter into our soil to fight with them and to kill them and destroy them. So, and that would be the case in the coming days and the coming years, and always in our in Iran. We are brave people. We have a great civilization. We have defended our land for thousands of years, and we continue to do that as much as it takes.
Let me ask you, because you have said that this was a war of choice. President Trump said one of the reasons for launching this war was that Iran, quote, already had missiles capable of hitting Europe and our bases and would soon have missiles capable of reaching America. Was Iran planning to directly attack the United States?
Well, this is not true. This is, in fact, misinformation. We have capability to produce missiles, but we have intentionally limited ourselves to below 2,000 kilometers of range because we don't want to be felt as a threat by anybody else in the world. We have not started any plan to increase the range of our missiles more than what it is right now. So there is no evidence, there is no intelligence, nothing to indicate that Iran is going to long-range missiles, let alone those missiles who can reach the United States soil.
All right, and of course, U.S. officials say that negotiations over this came to a halt and
Emirati gun sight. Video shows some of the more than 1,400 Iranian drones being blasted out of the sky over the Persian Gulf. Over 40% of Iran's drones have been launched at the UAE, twice the number launched at Israel. Overnight, Iran fired 17 more ballistic missiles and more than 100 drones. All were shot down except for one missile which splashed down harmlessly in the sea and 4 drones which slipped through. And South Korea says it's sending more surface-to-air missiles here to help this country
infrastructure in a new wave of overnight strikes. Iran continues to retaliate against its Middle East neighbors, leading to more civilian deaths as tensions with Tehran appear to be boiling over. Lucas Tomlinson is live in Dubai with the latest on all of that. Lucas.
John, the UAE has been the main target of Iran. This country has been on the receiving end of more of Iran's missiles and drones than any other throughout the Middle East, including Israel. And Iran's foreign minister also said those attacks will continue throughout the Persian Gulf and offered this explanation why.
No, we are not attacking our neighbors. We are attacking American bases, American, installations, American assets, which are unfortunately located in the soils of our neighbors. So we are not attacking our neighbors. We are attacking Americans who are attacking us. We are retaliating.
Now, last night, a drone was shot down near one of Dubai's famous skyscrapers in a very popular part of town, sending debris falling down and killing 2 Pakistani nationals in a car. The UAE military is knocking down 93% of all the projectiles fired here from Iran. This new Emirati gun sight video shows some of the more than 1,400 Iranian drones being blasted out of the sky over the Persian Gulf. Over 40% of Iran's drones have been launched at the UAE, twice the number launched at Israel. Overnight, Iran fired 17 more ballistic missiles and more than 100 drones. All were shot down except for one missile which splashed down harmlessly in the sea and 4 drones which slipped through. And South Korea says it's sending more surface-to-air missiles here to help this country keep its skies clear. And another drone slipped through in the Persian Gulf, John, this time in Kuwait, hitting this government building, spreading fire to multiple floors. The building housed Kuwait's Social Security administrations. And since we've been on the ground here in Dubai, John, missile alerts come in about twice a day, unlike in Israel, which the alert is through an app and gives you a little more detailed information about where specifically the missile or drone is going. Here it is a general alarm on your mobile phone, much like the weather alarms back home. John.
So that attack on that Kuwaiti government building, Lucas, that would seem to put the lie to Iran's contention that it's only going after U.S. forces in those other neighboring countries.
That's right. It was a Social Security building, and it's been pretty dangerous in Kuwait. Of course, the first 6 casualties of the Iran war were U.S. National Guard soldiers from Iowa based at a tactical operations center in Kuwait on the port. Then, of course, you had the Kuwaiti fighter jet in that friendly fire incident, perhaps something more nefarious, shooting down those 3 U.S. Air Force F-15E Strike Eagles. Thank goodness it was miraculous in that case that all 6 on board those 3 jets punched out, all 3 pilots and the Wizzos, the backseaters.
Yep. All right, Lucas Tomlinson reporting live. Lucas, thank you. So Iran has been responding to Operation Epic Fury by striking at its neighbors, as Lucas was just telling us. It says that it is targeting U.S. installations, but as you would expect, tensions are on the rise across the region, and those neighbors are furious at what Iran has been attempting. Steve Harrigan is live in Armenia, just a couple of miles from its border with Iran, maybe less than that. Steve.
John, about a mile away from the border where I'm standing right now, and some real devastating scenes of destruction in the capital of Iran, Tehran. Over the weekend, U.S. and Israeli warplanes targeting not just military sites, but also infrastructure that supports Iran's military, in particular oil refineries. At least 4 hit in Tehran and on the outskirts of Tehran, really creating some devastating scenes. You have the huge orange flames going up into the sky, the black smoke, and then that oil and smoke mixing with a rainfall that created a black rain falling on that city of 17 million people. Iranians being warned to stay inside their homes, not just to avoid the bombing, but also to avoid now the pollution from that bombing. Those who have the money, the means, are often trying to get out of the city, get away by the thousands, often to quieter areas, like in northern Iran, where the war is largely untouched so far. Here's one scene we saw right along the border between Armenia and Iran. We can show you a scene here from northern Iran. We're right now standing in Armenia. Beneath us here is the Iraq's river. Once you get across that river, that's where Iran begins. You can see rural scenes there, some sheep, a controlled burn, and tremendous mountains in the background. This is the area where the border crossing between Armenia and Iran is still a working land crossing, so we could see it get very busy in the coming days if refugees or supplies need to get in or out of Iran in a hurry, especially if the ports or the air is completely shut down. This is the way in or out. So we could see some dramatic changes to a pretty calm rural scene here in the coming days ahead. That potential flood of refugees leaving Iran by foot has not materialized yet. Right now at that border crossing, there's a pack of taxi cabs from Armenia waiting to drive people north. Few takers at this point. John, back to you.
All right, Steve Harrigan in Armenia. Keep an eye on the situation there for us, Steve. Thank you. So with the war in its second week now, the U.S. and its allies have had their hands full with Iran's swarms of attack drones. Iran's Shahed 136 drones are easy to produce and relatively cheap at about $20,000 apiece. Stopping them is expensive, with America's Patriot and THAAD interceptors costing millions of dollars. Let's bring in Dr. Rebecca Grant, National Security and Military Analyst and Lexington Institute Vice President. I guess the good news here, Dr. Grant, is that there are fewer and fewer of those Shahed drones being launched from Iran.
Yes, the drone threat is dropping, and from a tactical perspective, Iran's drones cannot stop Operation Epic Fury. John, we have a very deep bench of counter-drone systems. It starts with our fighter jets from the forward up in the mid, all the way down the Gulf states, and then the pinpoint defenses. In addition to Patriot and THAAD, there's a whole long list because the U.S.
60 Minutes Overtime.
The war with Iran is now a week old. Today on the Security Brief, we'll show you how it's evolving, what the United States and Israel are striking, and how the Iranians are fighting back. Over 1,000 drones were fired at the UAE in just one 24-hour period. The Shahed drones are cheap, they're abundant, and they keep coming.
The US has now asked Ukraine to help defend its Gulf allies from this specific drone threat. And we've been talking exclusively to a Ukrainian Special Forces drone commander, and we'll reveal what the world can learn.
The map, the drones, the defence, and what comes next. This is the Security Brief. Stay with us. OK, we're going to walk you through the map from those initial strikes on the first Saturday on the Ayatollah's compound to where we are today. It's been an overwhelming show of conventional air power, Mikey, but there is a strategy to it. And first things first is to take out and test the air defences.
Yeah, a lot to get through today, Christian. In air power doctrine, and I hate using the word doctrine because it's boring, but in air power doctrine, we call this offensive counter-air. So what does that mean? It means that there are a number of targets that will come out from this doctrinal term. First one is destroying enemy aircraft on the ground. Before they get airborne. So, I mean, the Iranians don't have a sophisticated air defense aircraft. They're getting there with the Su-35s, but targeting those aircraft so they can't get airborne and pose a threat to US or IDF aircraft. Destroying enemy air bases and runways so the jets can't get airborne. So if they don't get the jets, then the jets can't get airborne. Eliminating air defense networks, that's called IADS, Integrated Air Defense. That basically means surface-to-air missile systems and communication nodes that all talk to each other across the country. And then disrupting enemy C2. C2 is a word in the military we use for command and control. And all of these objectives under offensive counter-air are geared to progress towards air superiority, which in simple terms is the US and the IDF being able to conduct air operations without a major hindrance.
OK, well, let's look at the map to get a picture of where it is spread across the country. What do you see?
Well, there's obviously lots of targets, but if we can just take a look at the map now, we'll bring up what I think some of the key target sets are. If we look at the top one, targeted missile facility, you can see a lot of those in the west of the country. And the reason why there are lots of missile facilities in the west of the country is obviously the further west they are towards the border, the further the range that they can have extending across the Middle East. Targeted drone facilities, will come into this a lot more later on in the program. But again, this is the headache. The drone component is the headache, especially for the Gulf countries at the moment. Targeted naval base. The naval base at Bandar Abbas, you can see that just on the bottom of the picture. It's literally north of the Straits of Hormuz. This is strategic and it's critical because it enables the Iranians to be able to naval power project in one of the most critical pieces of water in the world. Economically, we've spoken about this a lot.
What's left then? That's the initial target set that you set out. What else are they looking at?
It's again, the drone facilities and air bases. These are likely to still be on the target list, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them in the north, there's a lot of them in the south. But as I said earlier on, the Iranians don't really have a sophisticated air defense fast jet capability and the missiles to go along with that. But nevertheless, they still pose a threat. The big one is the drone facilities.
So how are they doing that? What are they hitting this infrastructure with?
There'll be, I mean, the TLAM, the Tomahawk Land Attack Missile. I think we've got some footage of that. That is the weapon of choice at the moment. This is a Tomahawk Land Attack Missile. It's a cruise missile being launched from a warship, and these warships are likely part of the carrier strike groups that we see in the Mediterranean with the Gerald Ford, and that we see off the Gulf of Oman with the Abraham Lincoln. What's really unique about this Tomahawk Land Attack Missile is that it's got a 1,000-mile range. It travels at very low level, so it's hard to detect. And you can actually put steel penetrators on these things, which allows them to be bunker busters and take out those command and control nodes.
Right. And also the bombers were involved, the B-2 Spirit, the B-1 Lancer that we've talked about previously on the security brief. Round trips from continental United States?
Yeah, it goes back to the home basing problem. So the Trump administration weren't getting approval from the UK to use Diego Garcia, for example, by the Chagos Islands, which, whilst far away, isn't as far away as Whitman Air Base in Missouri. That's a 37-hour round trip. But they've not been using the GBU-57s, which we saw in Operation Midnight Hammer. They're the big 30,000-pound
penetrators,
massive ordnance penetrators, exactly, the MOPs. They've not been using those, along with the B-1, which is I think we've got some footage of the B-1 here. It's a supersonic aircraft. It can travel at 1.25 Mach at high level. It can carry 75,000-pound payload. It can travel at 0.92 Mach at low level. With the B-2, the combined B-2 and B-1 assaults or airstrikes using 2,000-pound bombs, they've been able to do a significant amount of damage.
Can you show me the threat level from the ballistic missiles?
Right, so in the build-up, we heard that ballistic missiles were on the priority list, and rightly so. Iran has the most volume and the most diverse ballistic missile threat in the Middle East. Let's take a look at we've got a graphic here, actually, which shows some of the capability in terms of range rings. So right in that inner circle around Iran, the red ring, Shahed 1, that's a short-range ballistic missile. Shahed 2 is out to 500 kilometers. That's the orange ring that you can see outside. You've got the light blue ring. That's the Qiyam 1. It's called a ballistic missile. It's like a short to medium range, 750 kilometers. And then the Shahed 3, which can go out to 2,000 kilometers. And what's interesting about that is when you look at RAF Fairford, which is in the southern part of Cyprus, obviously that's within range of the Shahed 3. But it's not just those missiles. Information suggests there's missiles called the Karam Shah ballistic missiles. This is an interesting ballistic missile that the Iranians have because it's actually got the highest payload in terms of a warhead at about 1,500 to 1,800 kilograms. And then the Shezil ballistic missiles, their estimated ranges are actually 2,000 to 2,500. So when you look at that graphic in the dark ring on the outside, you can potentially extend that range a little bit further.
But the biggest headache, obviously, I mean, the ballistic missiles, an enormous threat, but the biggest headache day to day is the Shahed drone.
Yeah, the Shahed 136. I mean, we've seen this in Ukraine. You know, in 2025, the Russians launched over 60,000 of these on Ukraine. This year, they've launched over 12,000 in just 2 months. So they are pervasive and they can cause a lot of havoc. Over 2,000 drones in the first week were launched by Iran. And if you just think about that, every dollar that Iran is spending on a Shahed drone, the UAE is spending $20 in shooting them down. And that cost-benefit ratio, we'll talk about this a lot, we have spoken about this a lot, it's unsustainable. That's the strategy of the Iranians.
Just going back to your ring graphic, I don't know if we can bring that back up, but what would the range of the Shahed be? In which circle does it fit?
So I've been speaking to a lot of the drone commanders in Ukraine, and there's all sorts of conflicting information about the ranges, but their sort of advice and what they work on in terms of planning assumption is about 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers.
Wow,
so,
that's further than I thought.
Yeah, so when you look at the Shahed 3 at 2,000 kilometers, you bring it in a little bit, and again, you know, you go back to RAF Fairford, that could be within the target set of the Shahed.
And in fact, it was targeted, as we know.
It was targeted. However, we have information suggesting that that particular drone didn't come from Iran. Now, we don't know. We haven't seen any bomb damage assessment. We haven't seen any forensic evidence of what that drone was. I mean, it could have come from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. They do have drone capability, and it is thought that they also have Shahed capability as well. What numbers? Estimates at about 2,000, but again, unverified.
When you speak to Western analysts about how many of these they have, how many they can produce, they will tell you that they can manufacture between 200 and 500 a month. The Iranians say it's much more than that. So the figure as to what they're producing is disputed. But in any case, they have a huge stockpile. The evidence is there for all of us to see.
Yeah, it's frightening, the stockpile, if I'm honest. I say that, I don't say that lightly. But let's take a look at what the Shahed is. And what's been really interesting is that you and me have been talking about Shahed 136s for 3 years. I'm getting people asking me questions who have never heard of a Shahed, and it's obviously only a Shahed only because they're now being used on Gulf countries that people are starting to realize what this threat is. Ukrainians have been dealing with it for a long time. But if we look at this, it is a really, really simple system. You know, if one gets shot down and you open it up, you'll find it's remarkably rudimentary. The airframe and engine, it's a delta wing design. It's 3.5 meters long, so it is bigger than you think it is. Powered by a piston engine, a two-stroke piston engine, travels at around 120 miles an hour, so it's not particularly fast. The warhead that it carries is between 20 and 60 kilograms, and that will be based on the range you want it to fly, because the heavier the warhead...
So it's a push propeller. It's what civilian hobbyists might use in light aircraft.
Yeah, super simple.
Really simple.
And,
okay.
and
inside it, the technology, is that Iranian?
The technology... So, it's been shot... I mean, this is the kicker. When one was shot down and they opened it up, out of the 52 components removed from the Shahed that was captured, 40 were manufactured by 13 different American companies. Commercial, off-the-shelf products called dual-use components.
Just US parts?
Not just US parts. There are components that have been traced back to companies that are headquartered in Canada, Japan, Germany, Poland, Netherlands, China, and Switzerland. And I think what's really important to know is that these companies are not directly selling these parts to Iran, but they get around the sanctions through shell companies and middlemen. So Iran is building a weapon of war here out of commercial dual-use parts that are actually difficult to control by sanctions.
You often talk on the security brief about cost-benefit ratios. What's the most effective way to shoot these down?
Yeah, cost-benefit ratio is the buzzword at the moment. For starters, you know, a $300,000 missile on a $35,000 Shahed drone, it's not sustainable given the numbers of drones that we're actually looking at. It's not just expensive, the reproduction of these missiles in order to counter the threat, you know, they're sophisticated. The production timelines are quite long. The stockpiles will be attrited pretty quickly given the numbers of the drones. So absolutely, you know, the cost-benefit ratio and the analysis on that means they have to find something better, more sustainable, with a better cost-benefit ratio. But obviously, it has to be effective as well.
What are the defence chiefs in the Gulf currently facing this threat thinking about, do you think?
So the first thing will be how much money and how complicated are the air defence systems that are conventional and currently being used to defeat these very low-cost threats like the Shahed. Let's just take a look at a graphic and do a bit of a cost comparison on that. Here we go. So the Iranian Shahed, the prices are actually a little bit higher. It's around 35 to 50,000 for the Shahed. the US Patriot missile system, the PAC-3, which is the latest missile, that's $4 million per interceptor, $4 million. Then you look at the US THAAD system, Terminal High Altitude Air Defense, $13 million a pop. Now, they're obviously designed to take out ballistic missiles, and they will be doing that. And then you've got the UK short-range advanced air-to-air missiles called the ASRAAM. That's what we've seen the UK Typhoons in Akrotiri getting airborne with, and in Qatar, and using that missile. That missile is $250,000 a pop as well. So you can see.
So that's not sustainable. I mean, like, clearly it's not sustainable. In fact, the EU Commission said this week the Americans don't have enough to supply the region, the Europeans don't. So what is Ukraine going to supply the Gulf countries with to take down the Shaheds?
Well, President Zelensky, he's spoken to his counterparts in the Gulf countries, so UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan and Kuwait. They all reached out to him, by the way. And he's told them that he's prepared to take quote-unquote concrete steps to help them defend their military bases and civilian infrastructure, which I think the Ukrainians are the best in the world to advise on that.
Is it just the kit, or are they going to send people to operate it?
Well, I think, look, the Ukrainians are without doubt the best in the world at this. They've learned on the job, and there are a lot of NATO countries as well that can learn from, not just the Gulf states. So I think it'll be a combination. It's about the technology that they're now using. It's about the tactics, training and procedures. It's about the protocols, and it's about the lessons identified. And that combination, that holistic package, will be absolutely invaluable to the Gulf countries.
And you've been speaking to someone.
This is an Iranian-made Shahed drone. These suicide drones are cheap, precise, and hard to shoot down. Unlike traditional reusable drones, these are designed for one-time precision strikes. In just the past year, Shahed drones hit commercial ships in the Red Sea, threatened the lives of US troops in the Middle East, and wreaked havoc in Ukraine. And Iran's willingness to share them with its allies poses an increasing threat to the US and its global partners. The Iranian Shahed is a family of kamikaze drones that self-destruct when they reach their target. The family is made up of 3 types of drones. The first edition 131, which is the smallest and lightest, the newest 238, which uses jet power and is believed by experts to be the most expensive, and the most commonly used 136. The Shahed 136 is 11.5 feet long, weighs 441 pounds, and is made out of relatively cheap materials.
The really comparative advantage of these drones is that it uses commercial parts. It's not that sophisticated. The engine itself is just a regular 4-piston engine. The propeller isn't anything fancy. The airframe itself is maybe some carbon fiber to make sure that it doesn't weigh too much, but overall it's fairly cheap to produce.
The drone has a delta wing configuration and uses a light frame to carry over 100 pounds of explosives. Iran claims it can reach pre-programmed targets up to 1,500 miles away. They're usually used in a salvo launch. That's when multiple weapons are fired simultaneously to overwhelm the enemy's defences. They're deployed from a truck and are initially boosted by a rocket, but shortly after, a twin-blade propeller and a smaller piston engine take over. The piston engine makes the drone relatively slow-moving and gives it a loud lawnmower sound. The drones fly at low altitudes, making them harder to detect because air defences tend to be aimed at higher altitude threats, but they can be vulnerable to simpler defences, like anti-air guns. Shahed drones are also quite small and harder to detect with radars compared to their larger counterparts which fly at higher altitudes. The Shahed 136's relatively low production cost of around $50,000 has meant that Iran can produce a lot of these.
Iran doesn't have the resources to, what we in the military say, like gold plate their stuff. They can't make everything multi-mission and beautiful and exquisite. They have limited resources. They have to use those resources in ways that fulfill their objectives, and so they're able to scrap all these pieces and parts and put them together. And sometimes it works, and a lot of times it doesn't, but in the case of the Shahed drone family, it's been pretty effective.
Take the US Reaper drone, for example. When it's loaded to its maximum capacity, it's over 20 times the weight and double the speed of the Shahed 136. Its purpose is not only to strike a target, but to assist in intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and combat search and rescue. And it can be used numerous times. But at around $30 million apiece, it costs much more than the Shahed drone. The primary advantage of the Shahed 136's low cost is the ability to keep producing and deploying them en masse without breaking the bank.
In salvo launches, you're launching a bunch of missiles, rockets, drones at the same time, hoping that they will penetrate defenses because there's just so many that you have to counter.
Still, the Shahed 136 has its drawbacks.
They're not good at not getting shot down. They operate in this space between regular drones and cruise missiles. And so they do have deficiencies operating in that middle space. They're not this golden child that works for every purpose. They're relatively slow. They are very loud, so they can be detected early. So in terms of using a few of these at a time, that's not an option for the attacker.
But the Shahed drones have been a critical part of Iran's strategy of proxy warfare. It has shared these drones with militant groups in other countries as a way to challenge its rivals without directly being involved in a battle.
The Shahed drone has made proxies more capable. Iran relies on its proxies for its own security and for its own regional interests. It has historically provided weaponry so that they can remain strong, so that they can remain operating in the region. And so drones are just another means to do so. And now we're seeing especially their use by Russia against Ukraine.
In 2022, Iranian officials agreed to transfer drone designs and key components to Russia. This enabled Russian forces to create their own new and improved version of the Shahed 136, overwhelming Ukrainian defenses and targeting civilian infrastructure.
Russia has specifically been using these drones in larger salvos against Ukraine, particularly striking against civilian infrastructure. And here we're talking about oil facilities, electric facilities, the grids.
Moscow plans to manufacture 6,000 drone units based on the Iranian Shahed 136 by 2025. These drones are expected to feature improvements such as active seeking and enhanced resistance against GPS jamming, which will enable greater precision.
Iran has directly sold licensing and training and basically the know-how involved in.
And welcome to the Weekend Prime Time. Some breaking news tonight. Iran's Assembly of Experts has named Mojtaba al-Khomeini to replace his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as the country's new supreme leader. That is according to Iranian state media. It comes as we learned another U.S. service member has passed away from injuries received during the Iranian regime's early round of attacks across the Middle East. This marks the 7th service member killed in action. Trump and Israel's war with Iran is now entering its second week and a new phase. The U.S. and Israel conducting massive strikes against Iran's oil facilities, creating thick plumes of smoke across the skies in Tehran. And Iranian retaliatory strikes continue today, hitting Gulf countries despite its president apologizing for striking its neighbors just yesterday. This comes amid growing speculation that we could see American troops on the ground in Iran. And now Axios is reporting that the U.S. and Israel have discussed sending special forces into Iran to secure its stockpile of highly enriched uranium at a later stage of the war. That is an operation that would likely require American or Israeli soldiers on Iranian soil. Joining us now, contributing editor for Wired, Noah Shackman. Also with us, contributing writer at The Atlantic, Arash Azizi. He's also the author of the book, What Iranians Want, Women, Life, Freedom. Arash, let's start with the breaking news out of Iran. Mojtaba Khomeini is not somebody that is particularly known outside of Iran. He never held any formal position. The second, I believe, of the supreme leader's, the late supreme leader's son. But at some point, there was a lot of concern within Iran that Iran would not become a dynastic rule. And yet now, here they are appointing someone who's believed to be a much more hardliner, perhaps, than his father. What do you make of this announcement?
Not only he's not known outside Iran, he's not that much well known inside Iran either. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how much of a shadowy figure this guy is. Yeah. Most Iranians have never heard him speak. They've never seen him say anything. All we know about him are based on second-hand reportings. We know that he has connections to his father's office, obviously. We also know that he has connections to different security services. In different years, victims of the regime, prominent victims like people like Mehdi Karoubi, former Speaker of Parliament, Mostafa Tajzadeh, former Interior Minister, have said that they know that he was running some of his security forces, but this is not a guy we've known. So different rumors sort of about him, but it does appear, at least based on last week, it was the hardliners who were pushing for him, and those inside the Revolutionary Guards. And yes, the irony of this regime that was founded on finding a monarchy, effectively bringing a sort of hereditary succession is not lost on anyone. Although there's a tradition in Shia Islam, obviously, of sons really mattering. Of course, the Shia system is based on hereditary succession in some ways, and sons of Ayatollahs running things really matter. But I think a big question is, how much of a stable regime can he build? How much of a stable order is he want to last or not? And I have my doubts whether he can be a lasting leader.
Israeli officials have said that whoever the supreme leader is going to be targeted. So it seems that they are in the business of trying to constantly decapitate whoever emerges as a potential supreme leader replacement. And now we know that Mojtaba is the supreme leader. Do you think that he has the buy-in, if you will, from all of the different agencies within Iran, the IRGC, the Basij, the parliament? I mean, I know that the Council of Experts plays the most important role in making this decision, but how hard will not only the external threats, the internal threats to his rule?
I think there will be very serious internal threats. I think he's not a consensus candidate. That's been clear in the last few days. Very prominent figures came out pleading with the Assembly of Experts not to go ahead with this. Hassan Rouhani, former president, very powerful guy, effectively. Ali Larijani, National Security Advisor, thought to be running things in many ways. But, based on what I know, he is close to Ghalibaf, who's the Speaker of Parliament, effectively running the war effort. And on the day Ayatollah Raisi died, president, if you remember, he died in a plane crash, a helicopter crash a couple of years ago. On that day, I spoke to someone close to Ghalibaf who said Mojtaba will be the leader when the time comes. And so this is something that people have planned for a very long time. And might surprise some, but they've actually been trying to sell him not as a hardliner, but as comparing him to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, calling him that he'll be the new
young
MBS.
reformer type.
And a modernizer of sorts. Of course, heavily taken with a heavy grain of salt. It's not clear at all that there's any truth to this. But this is something they've planned. He has many supporters, but he also has many opponents inside the regime.
Noah, we know that Trump has made clear that he thought he was going to be the person who gets to choose Iran's next leader. What do you think the U.S. and Israel are now planning to do?
I mean, I couldn't begin to speculate because what they've done so far is so freaking crazy to me that I don't even want to know what the next step is. But look, I can't imagine that they launch this whole war and think they're going to pick, declare they're going to pick Iran's next leader only to get the son. That just doesn't seem like that's logical to me. And every sign that I'm seeing is that they're flirting with the idea of ground troops, as you said, in the open. And, then we could be in for something that lasts. I mean, we all remember Iraq. This could last months. This could last years.
We actually have sound from a senator who said, of course we're not going to send in troops. Let's play that.
That's why I say President Trump he's not trying to start a war, he's trying to prevent a war. I do not believe the president will send in troops. In fact, if he sends in troops, the thud you hear will be me face planting because I fainted. I think this will all take a matter of weeks.
Arash, do you think it is possible for the U.S. to obtain whatever its objectives are, which, again, are kind of a moving target, but at the very least, maybe extracting the enriched uranium without having a presence on the ground?
I think if the president wants to get what he called the sort of Venezuela-style deal, where, he gets some sort of a leadership that he can live with, get some concessions on nuclear front and others, it might be possible. Frankly, it would have been easier without the war, if you ask me. I think it was probably, there were many people who wanted to deal with it. But it might be possible. And that's sort of a hard question now facing the new leaders in Iran, whoever they are. They have a society, they're besieged by their own society. People hate the guts of these guys. They believe they've done nothing good for Iranians, and they've also brought our country to this war. Ayatollah Khomeini's entire magical shtick was supposed to be that we're not going to have a war, right? We very well have a war, obviously, devastating war, nothing beyond the worst imagination of most Iranians. We've seen last night in Tehran, literally oil was coming from the sky. We've had the schoolgirls killed. We've had infrastructure Iran targeted. It only looks to get worse. So the new regime will have a hard time continuing this war. So they would have to find a way to get a new social contract. By new regime, I mean the new power in Iran, right, with Mojtaba or others, to get a new social contract with Iranian people and to somehow reach a deal with U.S. and ultimately Israel that would back them off. But of course, these things can take a while. It depends on what the president really wants, and I'm surprised that. I mean, most of us in our private lives, if we want to do something, we need to have some sort of a achievable end goal. So I don't know how.
You're applying logic and rationale.
So if Trump's aim is regime change, which we really don't know, he's given about 10 different reasons for why we're in this war. Why was there no plan for connectivity among the moderates that he is going to want to help take over the government? Because now I believe that 99% of the internet's down, and Starlink had tried to get connectivity, but they tried to get some terminals in with the State Department, but there's just nothing. It's a blackout right now.
Absolutely, and it doesn't seem clear what the plan is. President has also said very, very strange things. For example, he said that there were people he had in mind to succeed Khomeini, but they're dead already. So, I mean, U.S. and Israel killed everybody who was dead. So if this was your candidate, why did you kill them? And also, I don't know how does he think he can influence the succession? People were joking that maybe he secretly is an Ayatollah and has a seat on the Assembly of Experts and is gonna pick. But so it's not very clear there, but the real choice now is, okay, this is the declared leader of the regime, Mojtaba Khomeini. It's a rebuke to President Trump because he had said it shouldn't be him. So the question is, what will happen next? Is he going to try to target him? Is he going to, try to push? That remains to be seen.
Noah, I'm hearing that we have some breaking news, which is that CENTCOM is actually saying that we have an 8th U.S. service member who has now passed away.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this yesterday during the dignified transfer, the sort of question of how these moments change presidencies, maybe change the course of a war, to watch the bodies of people who've literally given their lives up for this country for a war where we're all trying to figure out still what the objective is. If things continue to go in the direction it appears they are going in, do you think there will be pressure on the president, on the people around him to change course here?
Yeah, I do. I mean, even listening to Senator Foghorn Leghorn, or whatever his name is, that was giving sound before, talking about really there's not a real appetite for this war, right? This isn't even the Iraq invasion where people initially supported going in. There's no afterglow of 9/11. Nobody wanted this war in the first place. So I think as you start to, unfortunately, hear reports like the one we just did, the outcry is going to be quite big.
No, one of the ideas of using boots on the ground would be to capture the strategic oil field known as Harg Island, which produces, I believe, 80 to 90% of Iran's crude oil. Yeah. And there's some notion that there's some thinking that if the U.S. captures this, it will then be able to force the Iranians into surrender because it is their main economic lifeline for the regime and the country. We saw what they did yesterday to the oil field to try to kind of break their will and their spirits. Talk to us about this piece that you have about how important energy is for Iran and whether it can be used by the Americans to try to force Iran's hand, and what concerns there may be for Iran to retaliate against other oil fields across the region.
Right. Okay, so Harg Island could be a Venezuela-style solution. That's the way that...
Like deploy special forces, capture the island, and then force the Iranians, or exploit it. Who knows?
I know that the Trump administration has said that we are going to run Venezuela by running its oil. Right. Okay? And so they may see a similar thing with Iran. Of course, Venezuela's leader, Delcy Rodriguez, is somebody that's been dealing with the United States behind the scenes for 10 years. I don't know that there's a real equivalent that seems to be coming to power in Iran. But yes, energy has been at the absolute center of the Trump administration's adventurism over the last 6 months. It's one of the main reasons it went after Venezuela. And Trump's advisors told him that if he went into Iran for a second time, that there would not be major oil shocks in the world, and that he could basically go in and kind of get a free pass on the global economy. Wow. We'll see if that continues to be the case with oil shooting past $90 per barrel.
I don't understand. why would somebody make that argument with a straight face? I mean, like, we know that 20% of the world's oil transits or used to transit through the Strait of Hormuz. We know that Iran is going to do something to try to fight back. They had said that they were going to try to shut down the strait entirely. At the very least, they can make it very dangerous for ships and tankers to transit through. Why would anybody in the White House give that advice?
Okay, I am now going to convey the White House thinking. I
Okay.
do not endorse this thinking.
Oh,
Here it goes.
Sorry, we do need to mention that we are showing on the screen people celebrating in the streets the announcement of the new Supreme Leader. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. So speaking of supreme leaders, this is Trump's quote unquote energy dominance policy. And the thought is that if the U.S. corners as much of the world's energy market as possible, it will functionally serve the way OPEC served back in the 70s and can control energy prices and can weaponize the flow of oil and natural gas around the world. And so they saw last June's attack on Iran, and that prices in oil went up and down relatively quickly and relatively, not too much of a spike. And they were convinced that could happen again. We'll see.
There's one thing I was going to add to that, which is China is watching all of this. China gets 80% of its oil from Iran, and so they have all kinds of vessels that are in the Persian Gulf right now, and they're watching what is happening very closely. I mean, we talked about this yesterday on the show that the U.S. is lifting sanctions on Russia so that Russia can sell its oil to try to stabilize oil prices, while at the same time expanding Russia's war chest with the money that it is getting from these sales. China now is going to probably be drawn into this because they're watching America seize potentially this oil, disrupt its oil. And so they're going to have to look at what's in their national interest, and that's probably just going to complicate things even more. So it just begs the question how much planning actually went through beyond 2 steps from the Americans and the Israelis in this.
Totally. And China is actually is really well positioned to survive a temporary spike in energy prices. Why? Because they have been converting more and more of their grid to renewables, whereas the Trump administration has been opposing that. They've been putting many more of their cars on the road that are electric, while the Trump administration has opposed that. So in an odd way, the real energy dominance is actually China's and not ours.
Well, they're also hoarding oil at this point as well.
Arash, can I ask you very quickly before we go, what is it like to be part of the Iranian diaspora right now? You mentioned moments ago that people woke up in Iran to oil raining down on them, plumes of smoke, fire running through the streets. I imagine there are all kinds of mixed emotions for people watching all of this play out right now. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that's like?
Well, every morning I wake up, I call a list of numbers of my family members to know if they're alive. And when you see, images on camera of places you recognize, of my hometown, Tehran, being on fire like this, knowing that's where, that auntie lives, that's where that cousin lives. I call every morning. Thankfully, all of my family members are alive still, although many of them, were pretty close to not being so when you see where things are attacked. But in general, I think Iranians, inside or outside Iran, feel they're helpless. The reality is their fate is being decided not by themselves, but by Donald Trump, by Israel, and by different factions of the regime that doesn't represent them. So it's an utterly sad moment. And for those of us in the democratic sort of opposition to the regime, it's a result of our failure. That we were not able to organize, we were not able to get our act together to be able to have a political force that could call the shots. So it's a very sad feeling for Iranians. And most Iranians, like most people around the world, they were not political. They didn't want to be political. They wanted to raise their families. They wanted to live a life. Most Iranians.
Hi, I'm your weekend host, Sharon Reich Garson. It's Sunday, March 8th. Today, Trump rejects settling the Iran war. Tehran moves closer to picking a new supreme leader. Israel strikes a hotel in the heart of Beirut, raising fears the scope of strikes could expand. And Kuwait cuts crude oil output, citing threats from Iran. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes, 7 days a week. U.S. President Donald Trump is doubling down on his war with Iran, saying it may only end with Iran's military and rulers wiped out. Trump telling reporters aboard Air Force One that he's not interested in negotiating with Iran.
They'd like to settle. We're not looking to settle.
And adding,
you know, at some point, I don't think there'll be anybody left maybe to say we surrender, but they're being decimated.
Asked about the possibility of sending ground troops to secure nuclear sites, Trump says it's something that could happen, quote, later on. Also on Saturday, Trump, along with Vice President J.D. Vance and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, were at Dover Air Force Base for the arrival of the bodies of 6 U.S. soldiers killed in the war. Israel's expanded its bombardment of Iran overnight, striking fuel depots near Tehran. And in the early hours of Sunday, an Israeli strike hit an apartment inside the Ramada Hotel building in Beirut. Israel says the attack targeted Iranian commanders operating in the Lebanese capital. Reporter Maya Jabeli is in Beirut with the latest.
The area of Roche where this hotel that was struck overnight is located is an area that overlooks one of Lebanon's most famous landmarks, the Pigeon Rocks. There are these 2 big boulders that sit in the sea, and it's a spot where people usually go around sunset and be able to take pictures with their loved ones. This was definitely the last place that people expected there to be a drone strike. And it's really freaked people out because until now, most of the strikes have been concentrated around Beirut's southern suburbs and then, of course, in southern Lebanon and in the country's east. But that area had been left alone. What is particularly concerning, really, is that the Israeli military said that it was targeting Iranian Quds Force commanders in that strike. They're saying that the Quds Force is active in supporting Hezbollah in this front against Israel. The authorities in Lebanon have said if there are any Iranian commanders that are here, we are going to arrest and deport them. We haven't had any indication that that's actually happened yet, but that is definitely a point of tension and of concern for Lebanese authorities.
Across the Gulf, Iran's drone attacks have sparked fires in several countries, including Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE. While Bahrain says an Iranian attack has damaged one of its desalination plants, signaling a widening assault on vital infrastructure in the region. And in Norway, an explosion hit the U.S. Embassy in Oslo overnight, causing damage and sending thick smoke over the street, though no one's been hurt, according to Norwegian police. And staying with Europe, President Trump says Britain is giving, quote, serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East, even though he added that the U.S. doesn't need them to win the war with Iran. Posting on Truth Social that he'll remember the lack of British support during the conflict with Iran.
David Muir, ABC's World News Tonight, America's most watched newscast. Now streaming same day with all the breaking news of the day on Disney+. Most watched, most trusted. Now on Disney+ every night.
Tonight, breaking news. Another American service member dies in the war with Iran, a country that just named a new supreme leader, and he's already facing threats from Israel and President Trump. We begin with the news just coming in. A 7th U.S. service member dies after suffering injuries in Iran's first wave of attacks. Iranian state TV says the new leader is the son of the late Ayatollah. Israel says he will immediately become a target. President Trump tells our Mary Bruce that leader won't last long without his approval. Israeli attacks leave an oil depot in flames with toxic fumes filling the air and acid rain falling on Tehran. Iran is firing back, hitting radar facilities, an office building in Kuwait, and now drinking water supplies are under fire. James Longman reports from the region tonight. And late details on an explosion at the U.S. Embassy in Oslo, Norway, now being investigated as a targeted attack connected to the war in Iran. Growing concern over Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium. President Trump is not ruling out sending in U.S. special forces to seize it as Israel vows to step up its bombing, saying many targets remain. Martha Raddatz on what happens next. Soaring energy prices as oil shipments dry up. Gas prices are up nearly 50 cents nationwide. It's close to $6 a gallon in some places. And tonight, airline CEOs are sounding the alarm, warning that airfares may soon be going up. In New York, police say improvised explosive devices were thrown near the mayor's residence during a protest while the mayor was inside. What we're learning about the two suspects arrested. Plus, a beloved teacher's tragic death. Police say it started as a prank, but now several teens are under arrest. Record warmth is fueling severe storms. Now more dangerous weather is on the way. Our weather team is tracking it all. The brawl after the buzzer. A college basketball fan picks up a chair after the home team loses. And America strong tonight. 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 months.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this Sunday. I'm Lindsay Davis. We begin tonight with breaking news and a sobering reminder of the human cost of war. Another U.S. service member has died after being wounded in last week's attack in Saudi Arabia. This is a defiant Iran has named a new supreme leader just 1 week after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in the early hours of the war. And just moments ago, state media announced his 56-year-old son has been named his successor. But President Trump told ABC News before that announcement that Iran's next leader, quote, is not going to last long. Israel is also echoing similar sentiments, and massive fires are raging across Tehran after Israeli strikes target oil refineries. This war is now 8 days old. We have team coverage once again tonight. ABC's chief international correspondent James Longman leads us off from Iraq.
Tonight, another American service member has died in the war against Iran. CENTCOM announcing that an American wounded in an Iranian strike on a base in Saudi Arabia a week ago passed away from their injuries last night. The news coming a day after President Trump attended the dignified transfer of the first American casualties, 6 soldiers killed in the early hours of the U.S.-Israeli offensive at their base in Kuwait. President Trump yesterday signaled that more U.S. personnel might make the ultimate sacrifice.
They're great heroes in our country, and we're going to keep it that way. There's always, when it comes to war, there's always that, but we're going to keep it to a minimum, I think.
And just over a week since the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei, Iran is tonight reportedly naming his successor. Iranian state TV says his son, Mojtaba Khomeini, has been named. Israel says whoever is chosen will automatically become a target, and Khomeini is expected to follow the hard line of his father, meaning his election may not change the trajectory of this war. And it is expanding on every front. Israel is now targeting energy infrastructure. This huge attack today on an oil depot in Tehran sent poisonous fumes into the air for miles around. Residents were warned to protect themselves against toxic fumes. Israel calls this a terrorist target, but civilians will feel the cost of this too. Iran says well over 1,000 people have been killed so far, including 190 children and 198 women. Tonight, CENTCOM is issuing a warning to Iranian civilians, saying Tehran positions military targets in built-up areas. With the internet blocked inside Iran, civilian voices are difficult to hear. But ABC has made contact with some, like Hamid, who tells us, honestly, hope is difficult to find. The truly frightening possibility is that the United States might suddenly leave the Iranian people alone with these rulers. Israel's offensive against Hezbollah in Lebanon is widening too. Lebanese authorities say more than 400 people are now dead, 83 of them children, 42 women. Hundreds of thousands have been displaced. And despite US and Israeli assurances that Tehran's missile and drone stock is severely depleted, the regime is still able to lash out at targets across this region. A desalination plant in Bahrain hit in a drone attack. And this government office building in Kuwait City ablaze.
And James, just before we came on the air, we learned that Iran had chosen a successor to the supreme leader who was killed at the start of the war. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, Mojtaba Khomeini. He is the 56-year-old second son of the former Ayatollah. He is, of course, also a cleric. He's considered to have been close to his father, often seen alongside him at public events. Also close to the brutal religious militia, the Basij, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. And Donald Trump has said that Mojtaba Khomeini would be unacceptable to him as supreme leader. Lindsay?
James Longman in Iraq for us again tonight. James, thank you. And as you heard from James, our chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce spoke with President Trump earlier today before we learned about the death of another U.S. service member. But they did discuss the casualties of war. Mary, tell us more about that conversation.
And Lindsay, I asked the president if witnessing those dignified transfers of 6 of the Americans killed in this war gave him any pause about this operation, but the president was steadfast, telling me, quote, no, not at all. In fact, he said that the parents of the fallen who he met with yesterday would be upset if he did that, adding that they all told him to, quote, please win this for my child. I also asked the president about those reports that the Iranians are getting close to naming their next supreme leader, and Trump told me that any new Iranian leader, whomever it is, has to be someone that he personally approves of, and that, quote, if he doesn't get approval from us, he's not going to last long. I asked the president if he would be willing to work with someone who has ties to the regime, and he told me, quote, I would in order to choose a good leader. And he said there are many people who would qualify, but Lindsay, he wouldn't name names.
Mary Bruce from the White House, thank you. The war is renewing fears about Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium. President Trump now says he will not rule out sending U.S. Special Forces to secure it. Here's ABC's Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Raddatz reporting from Jerusalem tonight.
Tonight, with the war with Iran now in its second week, President Trump considering sending in U.S. Special Forces to seize Iran's nuclear stockpile.
We wouldn't do it now. Maybe we'd do it later.
The president telling reporters on Air Force One the Iranians have not yet secured the uranium.
They haven't been able to get to it, and at some point maybe we will.
Last summer, the United States striking 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. But the enriched uranium remained buried deep underground. Former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, telling me the nuclear threat still remains.
Now, keep in mind, as long as you have that 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium, it only takes a few days to enrich that to missile grade, to military grade. And that can be put into a warhead, or it can even be put into a suitcase.
What has been destroyed in Iran are its air defenses, meant to bring down Israeli or American jets. But remarkably, this Israeli fighter pilot was able to record his mission over the skies of Iran, where nuclear facilities and Iranian missile launchers are buried deep underground. Israel says they have now destroyed the majority of Iran's ballistic missile launchers, but Israeli Brigadier General Efi Defrin says many targets remain.
We have many methods together with our allies to detect those launchers, and we are doing so.
What is the goal here? I mean, when you have these phases in this operation, what is the end here?
The meaning is their nuclear capabilities. We are talking about the missile capabilities. You know, those two elements. The first one we hit back in June, the nuclear project. Now,
did you obliterate it?
Well, President Trump said we obliterated it. Therefore, we did. So this is.
Wait. Did you obliterate it?
It is damaged severely.
But there are no signs that Iran is giving up. Satellite imagery from 5 countries, including Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, appear to show Iran has targeted early detection radar systems across the region. The systems crucial to blocking Iran's deadly missile strikes. The Iranian drones remain a major threat as well, and tomorrow the first group of Ukrainian counter-drone experts will arrive here in the Middle East to train Gulf countries to bring down the drones, a skill that Ukrainians have learned from experience in its fight against Russia. Lindsay?
Martha Raddatz in Jerusalem, thank you. As you've likely noticed, the war is fueling a spike in energy costs. Gas prices are up more than 50 cents across the country, and consumers could soon feel more pain with jet fuel, diesel for trucks, and tractors also surging. Here's ABC's senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang.
Flames at refineries lighting up the night sky in Tehran, drones striking oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, tankers targeted by drones, storage tanks attacked in Kuwait and Bahrain. All of this fueling mounting global concern of a looming energy crisis. Tonight, those strikes on oil and gas facilities across the region, forcing many major producers, including the UAE and Kuwait, to announce they're reducing production, threatening to further jolt energy markets, sending a ripple across the global economy. Americans already grappling with spiking prices at the pump, just 8 days into the war with Iran. Gas prices now up almost 50 cents since the war in Iran began, with no end in sight. Our Jacqueline Lee is in Los Angeles, where some stations are charging nearly $6 a gallon.
The national average for a gallon of gas jumped 52 cents in just a week, according to Gas Buddy. And here in Los Angeles, a gallon going for $5.39 with no sign of letting up.
Oil storage units full with nowhere to go after the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil normally passes, was effectively shut down. Tankers now at a standstill.
This is a short excursion into something that should have been done for 47 years.
Jet fuel prices soaring too. The CEO of United Airlines says this could soon push airline ticket prices higher.
It's brief. It's very temporary. Quickly after this conflict, energy prices will be back down to where they were before.
And Lindsay, tonight oil prices are rapidly rising, now crossing $100 a barrel. And tomorrow, President Trump will be speaking to House Republicans here in Doral, Florida. These are some of the president's most loyal allies, but even some of them have questioned the president starting this war without congressional approval. Lindsay?
A question shared by so many. Selena, thank you. Police are investigating an explosion outside the U.S. Embassy in Oslo, Norway. No injuries were reported, and authorities are searching for suspects. Let's bring in ABC's Tom Sufi Burridge. And Tom, was this a targeted attack?
It could have been, Lindsay. I mean, Norwegian police are saying the investigation's at an early stage. They're using dogs, drones and helicopters to hunt one or more potential perpetrators. And given the security situation amid the war in Iran, police in Norway saying, quote, it is natural to consider whether this was a targeted attack on that US embassy in the early hours of Sunday morning. Thankfully, no one hurt, just minor damage to the embassy's entrance in the Norwegian capital, Oslo. And it comes amid heightened security back in the US. Tonight, the White House reacting to reports that the Trump administration blocked the release Friday of a 5-page bulletin about a heightened threat of attacks in the US by Iran or its proxies. The White House saying information has to be checked and released in a proper manner. Lindsay?
Tom, thank you. Back here in the U.S., breaking news. The NYPD is on the scene investigating yet another suspicious device in New York City. This comes one day after police say a device thrown during dueling protests near the New York mayor's official residence, Gracie Mansion, was an improvised explosive device. The FBI's terrorism task force is also investigating. Here's ABC's Morgan Norwood.
Tonight, the NYPD says this device, about the size of a football, wrapped in black tape with nuts, bolts, and screws, along with a fuse, was indeed an improvised explosive device hurled at New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani's residence during an anti-Muslim protest.
Witnesses reported seeing flames and smoke as it traveled through the air before it struck a barrier and extinguished itself a few feet from police officers.
The FBI's counterterrorism division investigating whether those devices were thrown as an act of terrorism. The incident unfolding outside Gracie Mansion Saturday during dueling protests, including one led by far-right anti-immigration figure Jake Lang and a larger group of counter-protesters. Police say tensions escalated quickly when a protester pepper-sprayed a counter-protester. And one of those suspects, police say, an 18-year-old, lit and threw one of those devices toward a police barrier. Two suspects, both from Pennsylvania, arrested at the scene. Sources telling ABC News they told investigators they watched ISIS videos and confronted Jake Lang's protests in defense of Muslims, both facing federal charges. Mayor Mamdani was inside Gracie Mansion at the time, but both he and his wife are safe tonight. And Lindsay, just moments ago, police saying they found another suspicious device just blocks away from Gracie's Mansion. The NYPD bomb squad is on the scene. Partial evacuations underway tonight, Lindsay.
Morgan, thank you. Now to an alleged toilet paper prank taking a tragic turn in Georgia. A popular high school math teacher and married father of two is dead, and one teen is facing multiple charges, including first-degree vehicular homicide. Here's ABC's Faith Abube.
Tonight, a Georgia community is rallying around the grieving wife and children of a beloved teacher who died in what investigators describe as a high school prank gone tragically wrong.
It's just a tragic accident all the way around.
According to the Hall County Sheriff's Office, 40-year-old Jason Hughes was killed just outside his home Friday night when a group of teenagers came to roll toilet paper on trees on his property. They say Hughes came outside, and as the 18-year-old tried to flee, the teacher tripped and fell. One of the vehicles ran him over. Investigators say Jaden Wallace, the accused driver, and his friends tried to render aid, but the teacher later died at the hospital. All 5 suspects seen here in booking photos have been criminally charged. In a statement to ABC News, Hall County Schools writing, "Our hearts are broken," adding that Hughes was a passionate teacher, mentor, and coach who was loved and respected by students and colleagues.
And Lindsay, a message on a GoFundMe for the family underscores how indescribably difficult that this death is for the wife and